Order the Public Services Committee. Has the meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it has.
Can we please get a roll?
Certainly. Alderman Kavieski,
Here.
Alderman Ellis,
Here.
Alderman Mulder.
Here.
Awesome. We have a couple items on the agenda for committee business. First is to consider recommend the resolution 22R3057 awarding the contract for the Peacock Dam maintenance project. Mr. Fry.
Yes, thank you. So the item before us tonight, we've actually been talking about over the last few years, so I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it. But the Peacock Dam, which is located on North Lake Road, butts the property that Rockwell Park will be constructed on. This dam was built 80-plus years ago. And the front face of it, this part of it through here, is a bunch of 2x lumber laid flat and then stacked up. And then over the years, the 80-plus years, the wood has deteriorated. And so now the material behind that can flow through. So we're looking to do a project that will take in across the front, about a foot away from the front of the dam, we'll mount steel I-beam through here, and they'll stand up vertically, and then we'll put stop logs down in there. And then the gap between the dam and that new front will fill with a slurry mix. And then that'll fill that in and effectively construct a brand new front without having to do major reconstruction of the dam itself. So we're confident in that. The DNR has reviewed and approved it. So we had it designed, we submitted for a grant, so we're eligible for a grant on this. And then we just opened up the construction bids. We have the construction management portion out for an RFP right now. That'll be back at our next meeting, but we did receive 4 bids. The low bid from, excuse me, Terra Engineering Construction, approximately $135,000. This is the same firm that rebuilt the flume, which is right there at the North Main Street, right where it opens up between the 2 lakes. They were the company that came in and took care of that when we had a leaking problem under there. So was very, very happy with their work, and this is all coming in within budget when we factor in the grant. So recommendation is for Terra Engineering.
Matt?
Just out of curiosity, so as the existing dam continues to deteriorate, that just all remains behind the steel placement? Is that?
Correct, correct. And then plus the slurry material that we pour in between will impregnate into there.
Okay.
And then there isn't much structure to this dam. I know I had some pictures, when we were doing the grant. They're very old and bad copies, which is unfortunate. The dam is referred to as a crib dam because that's what it is. It's a bunch of cribs with large stone, and it's all of that's underwater. This layer right here is a bunch of 2-inch thick planks that make up the top. That extends back about 15, 16 feet. Somewhere in there. It was wide enough that when they rebuilt it, they drove a concrete truck over it to get to the other side, So the age-old question, how does a concrete truck get to the other side? Across the planks. But underneath there is crib, and as this stuff stays submerged and stays underwater, it doesn't deteriorate. It's when it gets exposed to air. So DNR is going to let us do a drawdown, get the water to stop flowing, get this constructed, and then back up and running.
Okay.
Alderman Ellis?
So we're in budget?
Yes.
Any surprises or anything? Is this,
No.
when they start putting the pilings in or anything along those lines, can there be any surprises?
No. It's
They
not
pull-
pilings. We're gonna mount the beams onto the existing concrete pad that's there. It's this area down here. This is all concrete.
That's concrete?
Yes. All this area here.
So we're actually moving the dam?
We're gonna extend about a foot
About a foot.
from the front of the dam.
Right, okay.
And then, like I said, build the new wall, the new front, and then fill in the gap in between the two of them.
So it'll be even sturdier, actually. Cool.
Can you provide some information on the drawdown and how that may affect both Fowler and LaBelle? I don't think it'll affect either one of them, but if you could touch on that.
Well, it will affect LaBelle because we're gonna draw it down 2 feet or so. We've done drawdowns a couple times. We will be putting out a notice so that everybody knows. Some people may pull their boats. We're waiting for after Labor Day to get through that part of it. Last time we had a drawdown, a lot of people left their boats and because they figured it was gonna fill back up, and we have to have this completed by October and filled back up. So there is still some season left, so if people wanna leave it, but we're gonna take it down approximately 2 feet from where the water is currently today.
That'll be publicized in the paper as well, I would
Correct.
imagine.
Yes.
I have one other question. At one point, there was a neon Oconomowoc sign attached to the
Correct.
dam. And I know I'm a proponent of trying to find a way to get that back, and there are other people. With the new enhancements to the dam, is that still a potential?
There's a potential to surface mount that. Some of the things that are a little different is the way the water comes over. I didn't bring a picture of it. Generally, the water is aerating when it's coming over because of the lip that drops that water off. You can see where this is kind of white. So in all the pictures that I've seen of those lights, that water is just cascading slowly over there and doesn't have all the air mixed in to give it that white appearance. So there's a lot of times that you might not see that or see it as well. The other thing is back when that was in place, the bridge was a steel girder design, which when you were driving over it, you'd be able to see the face of the dam. Now with the parapet wall that we have there, most vehicles probably won't be able to see over the wall to be able to see that dam lit up. But I would assume that if we did anything, it'd be something mounted to the surface of it. So we could be doing that anytime.
Okay. So I'd look for a recommendation to pass this on to council for consideration.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we award the contract of the Peacock Dam Maintenance Project to Terry Engineering, is that who it
Terra.
was? Terra
Terra,
Engineering and Construction Corporation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Second on the agenda is to consider recommend resolution 22R 3053 awarding the John and Lavinia Rockwell Park Phase 2 Design and Engineering Services contract.
Good evening. I thought it makes sense just to walk us back just a little bit in history here, because it's been a process. So going back to July of last year, the Common Council approved the conceptual plan for John and Lavinia Rockwell Park. October of last year is when the council approved the grading, design, and bidding contract with SEH for Phase 1. Phase 1 included shoreline restoration, the kayak launch construction, general grading, and the DNR permitting. So SEH did the design work, bid this out back in April of this year. In May of '22, we received one bid. The bid was well above our cost estimate by 70%. So we rejected that bid. We did some work with SEH to do some behind-the-scenes work, spoke with a number of contractors to see what the reasons were. Obviously, being busy is number one, but it was kind of a open-ended, in a sense, bid. So we did some soil boring since then. We're working with Ready Rock, which is the wall company, to do some design to specify things. And we're planning to rebid this for winter work, because most folks are obviously busy through about November, but then they lay off a lot of employees. So we're looking to have this Phase 1 construction happen sometime between November and March of next year. So that's some quick background. That leads us to tonight. So our overall goal to complete the park is to finish it by July 1st of next year, 2023. To accomplish that, we have to do design and engineering for Phase 2. Phase 2 is the final phase, so there's not more than two, but it would include all the other things that we have not included so far. So all the plans, specs, and bidding docs for all the items such as the dam overlook area, the front porch feature, the back porch area, landscaping, terraced shade garden, the boathouse being converted into a kayak ramp, walkways, restrooms, a boardwalk, a drop-off area, and restoration. Based on the current market challenges that we've talked about pricing, we plan to use a very detailed line item bid document. We actually did that for the first phase, which showed us some of the true cost. So that's going to hopefully provide some more flexibility for the final approval process. Phase 2 construction would be expected to start in the spring, hopefully in March or April, and be done again by July 1st. So the cost of design engineering for Phase 2 with SEH is $85,000. We are proposing that 50% comes out of the current city funds that we have for the project, and the other 50% would be shared with the Friends of Rockwell Park, the Build 517 group. So $42,500 each. That's a not-to-exceed contract, and there is no contingency. We've done all the soil work, we've done everything else we need to do, so that's the max. We have received the DNR permit for this project, which is great. We are still waiting on the DNR grant that we submitted back in April. We expect to hear next month. And that's kind of the highlights. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and Mark can do as well.
You have any questions? Alderman?
So I really appreciate doing the line item piece, simply because of if it was expensive this year, it's probably going to be expensive next year. And we don't, my understanding, we don't have the Friends of Rockwell Park or the Park Foundation do not have funds raised to complete everything we envision. Is that accurate?
Correct. They're currently working on it. They have about $150,000 currently. Their goal is to raise somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000.
Okay.
So that's something they're working on behind the scenes. There's been some good progress, but we haven't updated any numbers.
Okay.
The other, I think, as you mentioned, bidding, we ran into bidding situations as you do it during the year. Obviously, costs go up. So the plan is to do it over the winter, December, January, when hopefully people are looking for work for the next year.
Okay. I see. So we bid it this year in May when they were already full for the year. So we're trying to get on their books.
Right. That's certainly a part of it.
So this is, again, Phase 2. Phase 1 was already awarded?
The design was completed,
Correct.
but not construction.
Correct. So the design costs associated with that has been awarded and spent?
Correct.
And this is just design, not construction for Phase 2?
Correct.
There's $150,000 in the Friends of the Park fund associated specifically and designated for this park. I believe you mentioned $150,000 has been raised by the Friends. I think out of that 150, 100 is from the OAF.
I'm trying to remember if that's included in that number, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And I should say it's 150 new money. There was obviously the money that was raised for the purchase of the property, and there was some leftovers that went towards other things like design.
I think that was like 20,000.
It was like 50 or I think something like that.
Yeah.
So yes,
I guess what I'd be curious of is there enough money associated for the construction of Phase 1, let alone Phase 2? And you mentioned there's a grant, so I guess my question would be, is it appropriate from a timing standpoint to do a Phase 2 design element when the Phase 1 design construction portion of it hasn't been completed, nor the funds necessarily secured to complete it?
right, I know what you're asking. It's very similar to probably the skate park project, very similar to the splash pad project. We obviously will not advance anything until we have the funds
Boat
for that.
launch.
So
Like the boat launch.
there's, like pretty much every project we've been doing lately.
Yeah.
So there's enough money, obviously, without touching the OAF money, for the design from the Friends group, and they've raised some more money. 150 is kind of what I remember, but they've done more since then. But and to keep things on track, ultimately, that's why we're trying to do design for Phase 2 to get done by July 1st. But if we get to a point where we're ready to bid it out and we don't have the funds fundraised or the grant or those kind of things, we obviously will not get any further.
So the important part here, in order for us to determine what that cost is gonna be, is we do need to complete the design. It's no different than, as Craig mentioned, the other projects we had. We just had this discussion with the boat launch that we go out, get a design, determine what components cost what, bid it out, come back to the Common Council. If everything's within budget and money's been raised, we're good, we got a project. If not, then there's further discussion and then action from the Common Council on the best way to proceed. But the design's the important part. We're guessing at numbers, we don't have any clue until we have a design and specifications to go out to the contractors and get pricing on.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I'd just like to make a recommendation on Resolution 22R3063, awarding John and Lavinia Rockwell Park Phase 2 Design Engineering Services contract.
Looking for a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that'll move on to council for consideration. I'm sure there'll be some discussion associated with that. If there aren't any other items of question or comment,
Move to adjourn?
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ready?
I am ready.
All right, call to order the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, August 16th. Was the meeting properly noticed?
Mr. Chairman, it was.
Okay, we have just one order of business today to consider act on the vouchers for July 2022.
All I have for tonight is the voucher report.
Any questions on that?
No, I didn't have any.
It would be helpful if you spoke into the mic.
I was gonna say, if you
Feels so
stand
weird. It's
closer,
just
do
like
they not
you
ask
said.
questions?
Number to read in?
I'm gonna stand up front.
It should be in your packet.
The last page.
Yes, I need.
Yeah, I'll read it in. I will move to approve the July vouchers in the amount of $4,957,732.44.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Are we ready for our
We can
next?
start at any time.
Okay. Okay. We're going to go ahead and call to order the 2022 annual meeting and budget hearing for the Fowler Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Great. We're going to start off right away with the public hearing notice. Ms. Sullivan Murray, the Lake Management District Number 2, Fowler Lake, 2023 proposed budget.
All right, so this is the Fowler Lake budget, the Fowler Lake District. The budget was published in the paper. We have a copy of it here. The public hearing is for the citizens to ask questions if they have questions moving forward. The Fowler Lake budget this year consists really of the Goose Roundup and the aquatic plant management, and of course the $30,000 that we put away each year towards the
Equipment.
equipment. Yes, thank you.
I'd like to open it up to anyone in the audience. This is a public hearing. If anyone in the audience would like to come up to the microphone and share your thoughts with the council and with the entire group here in the room, now is the time to come up. This is just on Fowler Lake, just on the budget, the 2023. Yes. We're seeing no questions. We'll move on. We're going to move on to the annual meeting agenda, which we've already called into order, but I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes for August 17th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On to staff reports.
I'm doing the math in my head for a second, folks. So I've now stood up here for 16 years talking about Fowler Lake. And I always talk about the same thing. Mother Nature, she's the one that determines how much water and how much plant growth we get, and eelgrass. And eelgrass gets worse every year. This year, we have an abundant crop out there on the lake. I'm sure that some of you have been either noticing it or seeing it, hearing about it from the people along the shoreline. Eelgrass in Fowler, for some reason, grows to about 15 feet in length. And during about 3 weeks ago, it naturally starts to uproot itself. And then all of a sudden you have all this material floating on top of the lake. And a lot of, the residents think that maybe it's from our cutting operations, that, we're going through cutting and not cleaning up behind us, and that's what's causing it. Now, our cutting operation's not 100% effective. I mean, we do get some, but nowhere near what they're seeing out there. So I did want to just point that out, that, it's Mother Nature and the eelgrass. We are slightly ahead of the 5-year average for the amount of material that's been removed from the lake at this time, slightly below what we were at last year at this time. So overall, right about even. We did send out some notices that for the people along the shoreline as to where they put their plant material that we go around and pick up on Friday. One of the things we look at is the safety of our crew, and the fact that, with our equipment, we can't operate in less than 3 feet of water. We don't want to be next to anybody's pier or boats because this isn't a very agile machine. If a wind or wave comes along, there could be damage to private property, so we do everything we can to avoid that. So we look to have the material put out at the end of the pier so we can pull up to it, pull it onto our equipment, and then move on to the next one. We're willing to work with the people along the lake if for some reason that doesn't work, but that is something that is really important for us to be able to do this. It pretty much doubles the amount of time that we're out there, and this stuff can get pretty heavy, as the residents along the lake know. Goose Roundup, we mentioned that. So the last 4 years, we did not complete a Goose Roundup, and it was only because when the USDA notifies the city that they're getting ready to come by, you have to guarantee them that you have at least 35 birds that you've located that they can come and collect. So I think Goose Roundup and deer hunting is about the same, is you see everything until the day they know that someone's gonna be around, and then you see nothing. LaBella's had the same issue, but we do budget for it in case the situation is right and that we're able to go out and do that. We actually started doing that in 2014, and since then, 153 birds had been collected. So it has done some good, I do believe. The lake equipment, we talked about that. So back 2018, 2019, we invested $100,000 to take our existing equipment, which had reached its life, and refurbish it to a point that we felt that we should be able to get 10 years out of it. And so then over that 10 years, we're saving that $30,000 a year. We're putting that in the budget to accumulate so that when it comes time to replace the equipment, which a couple years ago was estimated to cost $425,000, we would have some funds for that. There are grant dollars out there. Now, whether or not they're there 8 years into the future, that I don't know, but we're at least making an attempt to make it so that once we get there, we're not gonna have to all of a sudden put $400,000 into the budget. So we have a drawdown, we talked about that on the Peacock Dam item. So starting September 12th, we will start to draw down the lake. The DNR limits us to dropping it only 6 inches per day. And they want us to do that because they want the pressure to come off the crib dam slowly. And then it's the same thing when we fill it back up. We need to have everything completed in the early part of October, so we will have a very quick project with that. And notification will be going out regarding the drawdown so that people are aware that should they want to get their boats off or piers out or do whatever, they can. As I mentioned, we're going to be done in October, bringing the lake back up, so they would have that opportunity. So that's all I have.
Mr. Fry, are there any other comments from residents in the area or concerns with regard to the lake? Is there anything else that's been brought to the city that you're aware of? I'm not aware of anything else, but I wasn't sure if you were.
You know, the only other thing was Alderman Spiegelberg made us aware that there was a citizen concern with potentially erosion associated with the ski show.
Oh, okay.
So we talked with Craig, and Craig had mentioned that was one of the reasons why we limit what they do out there. I mean, for the most part, I don't think you see very much high-speed equipment on Fowler. I think it's a pretty quiet lake, and so when the ski teams are out there, they are making more waves than what's normally seen out there.
Any other comments from Alderman Kavieski?
We talked about the drawdown again, and that the public will be notified. What I'd like to know is how much time are we giving those residents to make the decision if they're going to keep their boat or their piers in between the notification and the actual drawdown?
So the information is going to go out either later this week or next. We were waiting for the project to come to the Common Council and get approved before we put that information out. I mean, we're fairly certain that it'll get approved, but we try not to get ahead of ourselves.
So let's say it goes out in 2 weeks.
Next week.
Let's say it goes out next week for notification, gets approved the following week.
No,
And
no,
it starts
no,
when?
the notice would go to the residents next week. September 12th is when we would start the drop.
Okay, so you give them a couple weeks.
3 weeks probably, close to.
Plus, if it's only going down 6 inches a day, they still got some time
Yep.
after the drawdown starts, so.
Right, as I mentioned, we're gonna be back filling in October, so they would have that time. I don't know how long people leave their boats out there. I know the last 1 or 2 times that we've done drawdowns, I don't think a lot of people did anything with their boats, pretty much.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the last drawdown was 5 years ago, and I think the time frame was exactly the same as this,
Correct.
like mid-September.
Yep.
I mean, I know people around the lake are gonna wish that it was 2 weeks later than that, but, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, we have a question in the audience. You would like to come up to the podium, please, sir? And if you could introduce yourself and where you live, and...
Yes, my name is Jack Thomas, and I live on the lake. I'm at 515 East Grove Street. And I'm hoping the committee might enlighten me. Could you inform me if, in fact, we do have a no wake after sunset on this lake? Does anybody know?
I
Yeah.
don't think so. I don't know who could tell
I
us. if
believe it's DNR for both LaBelle and Fowler. It's dusk.
Dusk and dawn, I believe. Chief, can you help us, please?
Is there no
I know that because I
signage
got a
says
ticket.
that?
That was, what was that? I'm
Is there
sorry.
no signage that says that?
No.
Should we have signage that says that?
No, there's no signage, and I didn't know that. It was informed by when I first bought 14 years ago on the lake that it was a no-wake zone, and pretty much it has been up until the last 2 years. And there is a boat that continues to come on. It comes in at about 8:30, 9 o'clock after sunset, and it runs flat out, and it runs when it's dark, and there are people that sometimes will kayak without having lights on. I know you should have a light, but sometimes it's a Mastercraft, and it's got a converted engine, it's got a Corvette engine, so you can't miss the sound of this thing. But he's flying sometimes at night, and I wanted to know if there was, the chief could answer this, if there was some sort of patrol. I have called several times. Actually, I talked with the young man when I first got back. I live in Texas in the winter, and I saw him coming out and spoke with him, and he says, "Oh, I don't do that anymore." He doesn't do it any less either, I can tell you. But that's what's occurring, and it's one of these days somebody's going to get injured, unfortunately.
Well, what we'll do is I'll have Chief and our city administrator look into the signage, so that at least it's posted, if it's not.
Yeah, well, it's, they're not putting in at a public place. They live on the river and come down.
Oh, okay.
You know,
That
so
helps.
I don't know
It could
how
be-
a signage at the, boat
The boat launch.
launches would help.
But at least it could be enforced more, I think, if we have the signage that, we can start encouraging people, and then if the chief finds out, so.
That would be true, and at least as a resident, somebody, I could point to it and say, there's the sign.
If you can point to a time in a day, that would help. If there's a consistency to that pattern,
Yeah,
just so that we can try to inform that individual.
yes. Okay, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Yes. Please come, yes.
Marilyn Olson, 333 North Lake Road, Unit 602. Two comments. One, that Mr. Fry made, that there aren't many speedboats on Fowler Lake. On weekends, there are plenty of speedboats on Fowler Lake. And this past weekend, for the first time, I saw a wake boat. And those, typically are over on LaBelle, and they have huge wakes, obviously. And, we have a small lake. And so I dispel that we don't have much speedboat activity on Fowler, because I live on Fowler, and yes, we do. And I have a speedboat on Fowler. I have a question on the depth of the weed cutting. Tom does a great job on the weed cutting, but he is bound by the DNR. And so last year I asked at this meeting if the city had ever approached DNR for a compromise on the depth, because it used to be cut lower, and of course now it's cut higher. And right now, the whole south end of the lake is all but, it's no longer navigable. I mean, you're just tied up in weeds. And so as the summer goes on, your navigation area just shrinks into the very middle of the lake. And so, according to the minutes, staff was going to look into that and approach DNR again. And so I didn't hear it in the staff report, and I questioned that again this year.
Okay. Mark, do you have any comments on that? Because I don't.
So we're in the process right now. You may recall we came through and got approval for a grant to have our aquatic plant management maintenance plan reviewed. Sewer PAC is in doing that. It's about a $7,000 study. We're getting a $4,600 grant. They're still in the process of doing that. So it's through that process that, we'll look and see what their report says. We can reach out to the DNR. They're very firm on what they're doing. We pushed back on them the first time they came through, and it's referred to as the top cut method, where even though you've got plenty of depth and everything, they only want you to go down 2 feet. And it's unfortunate because when you get these bumper years like this, we cut down that 2 feet. Tom does an excellent job, like everybody will tell you. And by the time they can get back around, it's already popped up and growing. So not a lot of things we can do. Doesn't help when we have to miss a day because we're short on people for other work in the city. I know the elections, just to miss a day is a lot because we don't cut on weekends. So, we're doing everything, but we're in the process now of the aquatic plant management maintenance plan study, and that's when we will reach out to the DNR on
So
cutting methods.
roughly, can you give her a little bit of an idea of a time frame of where that is?
I do not know that right now off the top of my head.
Okay. So if we can get back to you on the details, I think that would be really helpful, because I hear what she's saying, but she's come back twice, and I want to make sure that there's some direction, or at least an answer.
Yes.
Sound good? Okay. All right. Any other comments from the, you want to come back up? Go ahead. Okay. All right. Well, then, let's move on, please, from staff reports on to the adoption of the 2023 budget. Ms. Sullivan Murray.
Thank you. So the 2023 budget dollar amount is $38,200, with the levy part being $37,555. Currently, the lake fund balance is shown here at undesignated amount of $40,000. We'll be putting another I'm sorry, the whole amount is 160, the undesignated is 40, we have 120 towards that equipment. We'll be putting another 30 in this year. Sorry about that. So what we're looking at is a tax levy mill rate of just over a penny, 0.129 per thousand on your home value. So on a $350,000 average home, we're looking at $4.52 for 2023 budget.
Thank you. Comments from the audience or council on the budget? Hearing no comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the adoption of the 2023 budget.
So moved.
I have a question.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And Alderman Ellis, you have a question?
Can you go back?
Sure.
Can you go back to that? Okay. So it says here, in reserves, we have 120,000.
Right, and that's what we're saving for the new equipment for the weed cutting.
It's the 30,000 a year that
All right.
we budget.
And we've got an unassigned fund balance of 40 grand, so we've got 160,000 in total?
Right.
So why are we still going after the 37.5? I don't get it.
So we have decided 3 years ago now, that we would levy $30,000 a year for 10 years so that we would have enough dollars to put towards the purchase of the new weed cutting equipment. So
And how
that
much is
is,
this?
decided a few years ago. And then the remaining $8,000 that we have in here is, as it says up there, for the Goose Roundup and for the aquatic plant management. So every fund has some fund balance in case something happens. So we always have some fund balance in there. So, the expenses really $8,200, the reserve fund $30,000.
And how much is this machinery was supposed to be?
So there's.
A little over 400,000, I
There-
think.
There's three pieces of equipment. There's the cutter, there's the transport barge, and then the conveyor that offloads the material and puts it into the truck. Just over 425,000 is the current estimate on replacing those three pieces of equipment. So we're gonna accrue 300,000 over 10 years. There's also grants available for it, and we know that this will put us close.
Have we gone after these grants already?
Well, we have to wait till we're closer to purchasing the equipment, because it's still 7 years out.
Yeah.
And we can't try and purchase them now with the 160 we have?
We don't need them.
When they give you a grant, they're generally only good for a short amount of time. When you get a grant, you need to spend the money right away. So we're not planning on spending the money for 7 years. So when we're getting closer to that time, when we're actually going to purchase the machine, that's when we'll put the grant applications in.
So if I understand you proper, what we're doing is we're going after the full $400,000, so when that time does come, we have it in the bank. Is that what we're doing?
Correct.
Do we have a
3
motion?
years ago, we had to levy $100,000 in 1 year so that we could repair and refurbish that equipment. So trying to stay away from that by doing $30,000 a year and putting that in a reserve fund to help pay for that equipment.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments? Evan, you good? So just like to, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? And those in the audience may also vote if you're from from Fowler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Rozak, nay.
Rozak, nay, so 1 nay.
Ellis, nay.
So 2 nays, it passes. On to our next item, set tax levy for 2022.
The tax levy would be $37,555, or about 0.129 on the mill rate.
Questions or comments from Ms. Sullivan Murray? Sorry, my tongue's
It's
not
okay.
working, I don't know. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Second. Do we have any further comments or questions? Anyone in the audience? I'd like to, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
For adjourning?
Yeah.
Okay, aye.
Wait, we're not adjourned?
No,
It's not a motion to adjourn.
No, it's a motion to
This
set
is
the
to set the
levy.
tax levy.
it's
Thought
set
we
the levy
already- I'm
amount.
sorry, I thought we
We just
already.
did the budget.
Adopted the budget, then we
and
set
then
the
levy.
tax levy.
Levy, I'm
missed that
sorry.
part.
Yeah.
Keep up there, VP.
Sorry.
So we have a motion and a second. Is that still in force?
Yes.
Because you made the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Rozak, nay.
Ellis, nay.
Passes. Move on to set meeting date for 2023.
Generally, we do this during the second council meeting of August, and our time has usually been 7 o'clock. So if
That'd be-
that's still okay,
August 15th, 2023.
thank you.
Do we need to vote on that? Any objections to that time and day? Okay, we'll move on to our next item. Are there any other business items that may properly come before this body? Because again, we are talking with the Lake Management District number 2 for Fowler Lake. Any other comments? Please come forward.
Carolyn Olson, I have a question for Mr. Fry. You talked about, my question to you is, do they cut deeper for the water ski show on the east end of the lake?
No. Well, the DNR no, I thought the DNR, and I apologize, it's been a while since I've looked at the study, but the DNR, I thought, let us do a channel for them.
If you could come to the mic,
Yeah.
please.
So this is Tom Keelik. Tom is the Public Works individual that takes great care of Fowler Lake, and everybody compliments him on it.
Pull up the mic. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
from the bridge out, the river channel, we can cut deep. And then there's a little squiggly area that they have that they can make a loop into that area, or into about from St. Paul's to about where Jack lives, in through there. I can cut about 5 feet deep there.
And that's DNR approved.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
So my comment is, if you can do it for the water ski show, what about the people that live on the lake?
So unfortunately, as you mentioned, Tom does a great job, but we have to do with the DNR.
Well, no, right,
No,
exactly.
no,
This is not his issue at all.
I'm not disagreeing. So, they made the exception for the water ski show loop. So, if we didn't have that on the lake, then they wouldn't have done that. I'm not going to guarantee that we get that again. So we will work with them. We will discuss it with them. We're not in disagreement with you. We'd love to be able to cut deeper where we could. But, all we can do is ask, but they're the ones that issue the permit.
I understand. It would be nice to have a loop around the whole lake so we could all enjoy
Right. Oh, yes.
the full capacity.
Yes.
And my other comment is on the notification of this meeting, that last year I asked about written notification, and I thought it was said that it would be on the Oconomowoc Utilities bill, that it's in one of those public notice sections. And I went back as far as April of this year, and I have yet to see any written notification. And so when I went on the city website, where it describes the Fowler Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District, it says a written notice of the annual meeting and budget hearing will be mailed at least 10 days in advance of the annual meeting to all property owners whose names appear on the tax roll. And so I'm just, again, you can see how many people are here on the tax. I mean, it's only word of mouth, and there's only 2 or 3 of us here. And people don't even know about it. And so, how is this being notified to the people, certainly the people that live on the lake?
Thank you for your comment, and I think it seems to me, appears to me that we've dropped the ball on that, so we'll make sure we have that focus.
Oh, hold on.
Mayor, we
Unless
send
I'm-
written notice to anyone, to the addresses where people don't, the owner does not live at that address. So those are the ones we send out. We don't send out, it's 85% of the city. We don't send out individual notices unless the owner does not live at that residence, so that they know something's going on in the city.
And then there's a-
Otherwise, it gets posted in the paper and on their website.
I'm a little confused, but I'll look into
Own
it.
a house, if you own a house
Yeah.
there, but you live in Texas,
Yes,
you
As
would
your
get
full-time
a written
domicile,
notice.
yeah.
but if you live there and you live in Oconomowoc, you don't get a written notice?
No, you get the newspaper notice and the website notice, and I don't know if they had it on Facebook, or I'm not in charge of the noticing it, but I know that that's, I know that that's what happens.
They get a formal legal notice per Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you, Matt.
Alderman Ellis?
So then my question is, why are they not getting it? That doesn't make sense. They're here, they're living here. Why are they not getting it? Why are we going to send letters all the way out to Texas, Arizona, Florida, the moon, when we've got just as many individuals living here around the lake? Why are they not getting a notice?
The reason is that we don't send a legal notice or a notice to every single person of of the common council meeting. So if you would send a notice to every single individual for every common council meeting, it would cost a ton of money.
We're not referring to that, though. We're referring to
Well, I
this
know, but it's
specifically.
the same statute. Public notice.
Kevin, if I can interject, the reason I think there's a confusion is it's the Fowler Lake Rehab District, so there's an assumption that means just for people around Fowler Lake. It's not. It's 85% of the citizens, give or take, of the city.
95.
It's 95.
Oh, it's 95%. You said 85.
I did,
before.
I
always
like I
thought it was
said,
95.
I'm not the one that sends notices out, but I know that it's the majority of the
So
city.
unless you're in the Lac LaBelle Rehab District, you pay this extra tax in your tax bill. It's not just for people around Fowler Lake.
That's correct. It's for the whole city except for Lac LaBelle.
Correct. And so that's thousands of people. That's why they
That
don't
makes
get a
sense then.
separate
My,
notice.
yeah, my understanding was the request was that from last year, was that it would be made by letter to everybody that lived on Fowler. That's where I had the disconnect, but we can't do one thing for one group and a different thing for another group. So I think you now have your answer more clarified, and it's definitely more clarified for me as well. So it's difficult to get people engaged in anything.
And that this one actually gets an extra notice because it has a public hearing attached to it.
Yeah.
So it goes in the paper as well for a public hearing notice for this budget adoption.
Any other comments? Alderman Spiegelberg?
I do wonder, and maybe Marilyn even knows the answer to this, but I do think in the past there was some type of more of a notice, a letter written or something, because when we first moved here, there used to be a lot more people here for this meeting. So I do kind of wonder what happened from that point to here. I totally understand, we can't mail out to all these people, but I wonder what
changed?
that was in the past, because there used to be a lot of people here, right, Marilyn? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Let's look into it with a little bit more focus. Alderman Mulder?
So you can register on the website in the Agenda Center to have an
Right,
email
right.
sent to you so you can go to the Agenda Center, sign up for that particular committee, and then you'll get that notice. Now, it won't be months ahead of time, but it'll be the week, when it goes into the paper, you'll get it in your email, so.
But I also think, to her point, a lot of people don't know that exists, and that's a disconnect. Yeah, 1 second, Alderman Ellis?
And also, something you may want to consider, maybe you're doing it now, maybe you're not, but you can have something like a telephone chain or something along those lines with one individual who would be kind of the leader of it, and then gets it around to the other residents that are associated in that area. So there's a lot of things that can be done so the communication can get out.
Ms. Conan?
Thank you, Mayor. I would also add on to Alderman Mulder's comment, there's also public notices on the city's website, and you can also sign up to receive those. So the public hearing notice, any type of public notice, you will get that. And so as soon as the public hearing notice goes out, which would be earlier than the agenda, you would be notified of the date and time.
Like to entertain a motion to
Well,
adjourn. Oh,
Yeah, I have a comment quick.
yes.
So I received an email today about dissolution of districts, probably because late yesterday I requested the meeting minutes for the last several meetings of this district. And I think actually the amount of people that show up for this is very interesting for the past couple of years because it exemplifies why I believe this dissolution should happen of this district. In 2019, I asked that we look into, from the meeting minutes, dissolution of this district. In 2020, Rosick asked what the city needs to do to move the district into something more similar to Lac LaBelle. He suggests the city figure out other funding methods and look into it. August 17th, 2021, Rosick asked staff again to review what the city needs to do to eliminate this district, make it a DPW line item in the city's budget. Magnus stated staff will look into this issue, voice vote carried, etc. This is at least the fourth, if not the fifth meeting where I'm encouraging our city staff. And this time I will actually put something in writing after the meeting via email pursuant to section 33.35, dissolution of the district, to ask as an elector that this district be eliminated. It's a complete waste of time. This should be part of the regular city budget and discussed with, and the fact that only 3 or 4 people show up exemplifies why this should be gone. The other thing that's weird about this district is I literally could invite 5 of my best friends to this meeting tonight and eliminate the budget. The way the commissioner is set up for this system and the way this is entirely set up is an anachronism in the city. It made sense when I think part of the lake was also in the town, just like what Lac LaBelle has, because there's 3 municipalities that surround and support the lake. Each group donates their money to that district. The district has commissioners who are not just people from 95% of the city that could show up at any given Tuesday night, and then they vote on how to spend that money to support the lake. This lake is completely inside the city, and so there is a process to dissolve. I think we need to look into it. I will make a formal writing this time, and I hope that it's followed up on before the next meeting. Otherwise, my plan is I'm going to bring 5 or 6 of my best friends to the next meeting next year on August 15th, and we're just going to vote the budget down, because that's the way this system works. You just get 5 or 6 of your best friends out and vote something in. It's an anachronism. We just need to do something and look into it. It doesn't mean that we vote it down, but we need to see what our options are. And it's been 4 years in the making. And I came to the meeting very, very irritated tonight because this is something I've been asking for us to at least look into. And hopefully this time it happens. Thank you.
Any further comments or suggestions? Anyone in the audience? Like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move to do that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. We're going to switch computer platforms, and we'll start the Common Council meeting shortly.
Three people show up.
Ready to go?
You can sit next to me.
I don't want to sit next to
Okay, I'd like to call the City of Oconomowoc Common Council meeting to order for Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Thank you. If we'd all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Here.
Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder. Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Alderman Rosick.
Here.
On to our first public hearing, the Wetland Text Amendment. The purpose is to hear public comment on the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment that creates section 17-116 pertaining to wetland regulations. The text amendment creates wetland regulations including a 10-foot no disturbance setback from all wetlands. The ordinance discusses both permitted and prohibited uses of these within these areas. Section 17.904 definition is also being amended to add definitions for wetland and land disturbing activity. Mr. Gallo.
Thank you, Mayor. The ordinance that's before you that was just introduced is a wetland setback ordinance. It requires a 10-foot buffer from a delineated wetland of a quarter acre in size or greater. This is one of the things that I had our intern, Rachel Olsner, look at this past summer. She's going to give a brief presentation on it right now, introducing the item, and then it's on the agenda later in the evening. We'll be happy to answer any questions at that time.
Hi, yep, so I'm Rachel, and this is a wetland ordinance that the city planning staff has been working on for the last few weeks, and I'd like to just start off by saying that this is something that has been in our comprehensive plan since the update in 2019. We have a goal in there that says specifically that the city would like to protect the wetlands from water quality issues and potentially create a setback to ensure that development is not built right up to the edge of a wetland. So that's something that's in our comprehensive plan, and that's why we're bringing it forward tonight. It's something that we should be considering, and that's kind of the background of the comprehensive plan and why we have this ordinance today. The definition of a wetland is defined in the state statutes, and that's the same definition that many municipalities around here have adopted. I listed some of them there on the screen. In Oconomowoc ourselves, we do use this same definition. It is in our chapters 16 and 19, which is on shoreline wetland districts and then stormwater management. We do not have this definition in our zoning code, however, so part of this ordinance is putting that definition into our zoning code. So if this setback gets approved, we will have that definition carried over. Not a big change, just adding a definition that we already have elsewhere in our municipal code. The state statutes do not require a general wetland setback, but we still feel, as the planning department, we felt that it was something that was important to have, not only for the aspect of environmental protection, but also because we want to protect our property owners as well. So when we, build developments that are right next to a wetland, wetlands are prone to change. You have more rainy years, the wetland can expand. All of a sudden you have flooding in your basement if you've built right next to it. So having at least a little bit of a setback will also help protect our, people who are building houses, people who are building developments. So it's not just the environmental aspect of this, it's really about our development as well. Just creating something that is beneficial to the city all around. Here's just a couple of the reasons that are from some of the big organizations, the EPA, the DNR, reasons why wetlands should be protected. And these are more of those environmental reasons, water filtration. They help prevent runoff, prevent erosion, promote biodiversity. So overall, just a good thing to have around. And then I just want to go through a quick couple examples of nearby municipalities that have a setback. Many of them do. And we kind of wanted to research some of them to see, what might Oconomowoc decide to include in their ordinance. And the first one here is Delafield. So what they do is they use their interior side yard setback. So that varies depending on the zoning district. It goes anywhere from 0 feet to, I think 30 feet was the largest one. So it's something that changes depending on what zoning district you're in. And we talked about this in the planning department, and we kind of thought, we'd rather have it be something consistent. If the goal here is to protect wetlands, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to have something that, changed depending on what part of the city you're in. We wanted something consistent. So this is one option, but it's something that we decided to steer away from. The city of Pewaukee has a 25-foot setback, and this one that I pulled is from their agricultural district, their section on the agricultural district, but they do have that same 25-foot setback for all of their zoning districts. If you go through their zoning code, they have it in every single one, 25 feet. And then the village of Waukesha which has adopted the county wetland setback, which is 75 feet. They do have quite a few exceptions that you can see there, things like stairways or walkways. You can have an accessory structure a lot closer than your principal structure, but theirs is quite extensive. The general setback is 75 feet. So I kind of just wanted to go through these to kind of show you that there's not really a set standard that we have around this area for something that, oh, all cities have a 25-foot setback or they all have a 75-foot. It really depends on where you are and what the municipality decided to adopt. So this ordinance that we are proposing has a 10-foot setback, which we felt was quite reasonable, especially compared to some of these, more rural cities or villages, I guess. And so 10 feet is what we thought, okay, this would be a good start, at least, something that would help, show people that we are, we're caring about sustainability as well as our development. And some things, I wanted to pull up a few different maps. This one is from the Hickorywood Farms subdivision. If you zoom in a little bit, you can see the wetland is outlined in the green. The property lines are outlined in orange. So in this case of this development, we had very intentionally put our property lines so that they don't cross over those wetland boundaries. And we're hoping that by adopting this ordinance, this would be something that we might be able to avoid in the future. People might, rather than saying, well, we don't want people to build on a wetland, so we're just not we're gonna create, weird property lines and wonky shapes, We're hoping to say, okay, well, maybe we can have wetlands on people's properties as long as they know, and we have this in our ordinance, you have to be this far away. There's an example of that here in the Prairie Creek Ridge subdivision. You can see there that this, that lot up in the top left has quite a bit of wetland on their property. And because there are some wetlands on people's properties, this is another reason why, we should have this setback, is because this person, potentially they could build something right up to the edge of that. And that could potentially be a problem, for the environment as well as for them personally and financially. So this overall is just something that we can see is probably a need in our city. This ordinance has sections on why wetlands are good. It has sections on what are permitted by right uses in the wetland setback areas, and it also has prohibited uses. I just wanted to go through a couple things about the ordinance that might not be so clear on first glance. The second definition that we wanted to add to the zoning code is land disturbing activity. We already have the definition of development activity in the zoning code. However, there are certain things in the development activity definition, such as zoning and subdivision plan development, that we don't want to necessarily say, well, you can't have any development activity because, well, that includes zoning and that includes subdivisions, and we're not necessarily saying you can't have zoning in a wetland setback area. Plus, the land disturbing activity definition has a lot more narrowed focus. It explains it a lot clearer what specific activities we're hoping to not have happen in those wetland setback areas. So these are, some of the reasons that we felt an additional definition would be beneficial to include in our code. And then we also have a little section on mapping. The DNR has a GIS database that shows all of their mapped wetlands in the state, and it automatically categorizes them by quarter of an acre in size and larger, and then less than that. So that's one of the reasons why we chose that quarter of an acre size. We want to avoid, telling people, well, there's this little tiny patch of wetland, and now you have to, keep this distance from it. You can't build around it, when some of these things that are smaller than a quarter of an acre are not fulfilling those goals that we're trying to accomplish by, providing water filtration, by promoting biodiversity, things like that. Some of these little tiny patches just don't accomplish that. So we chose that quarter of an acre in size in order to give people more, flexibility with their land, so that if they do have those tiny patches of wetland, they're not as restricted as, somebody who has something that could potentially be beneficial environmentally to the city. To be clear, the measurement of the setback would happen from the wetland, an official wetland delineation map. So we are proposing having a city wetland map that is those DNR sites overlaid onto our city map. And that would kind of give us an idea of where these wetlands are in general. But the official setback would be measured from an official delineation. And then finally, the last part I just wanted to touch on was the exemptions. So as you saw a few slides ago, there are some properties in the city that may have a wetland on them right now, and we don't want to bring, any development that we've already approved. We don't want to bring them into non-compliance or make them illegal. So we are making sure to include a provision that declares them legal, non-conforming, so that they, are legal for things that have been previously approved that may not fit the provisions laid out in this ordinance. So that's kind of the overview.
No, thank you very much. We're in a public hearing at this point. Do we have any comments on this topic from the audience? Any comments with regard to this wetland text amendment from anybody in the audience? We're seeing no comments, no input. We are now closing the public hearing, and we're moving on in the agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes dated August 2nd, 2022.
Rosick, so moved.
Kavieski, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Without objection, I'd like to bring forth item 10D forward, which is the presentation of the first year of operation from the Bethany Recovery Center for the group of living use. Without objection, I'd like to bring that forward. Are there any objection from council members?
Are we doing comments from the?
That'll be after
Okay.
this, yeah. If you'd please come forward, please introduce yourself. It's nice to have you back, and we're looking forward to your one-year update. Thank you.
Hi, it's great to be here. My name is Jenny Schmeichel, and I am the Executive Director for Bethany Recovery Center. I have been given just an outline of what to cover, and I have something prepared right now. So just as a reminder, Bethany Recovery Center is a residential treatment facility for adult women to address substance use disorders and co-occurring mental health disorders. We serve, like I said, adult women. We specialize in pregnant women and women with infants. So we opened approximately a year ago, and our facility has a total of 30 beds, 12 on the third floor and 18 on the second floor. Currently, as of today, we have 20 residents, 4 pregnant women and 5 babies. Our highest census has been 26 residents at one time. So we've had a very busy first year. Let's see. So going back to a year ago, August, we started pretty slowly with an average of about 5 residents for most of 2021. We were only utilizing 1 floor of the facility. Since opening our doors, we have had a total of 86 admissions, and the average length of stay has been 53 days. We began a state contract April 1st. The state contracted with our entire second floor, so that's 18 beds. And as soon as that contract started, that's when we started really filling up. And so that accounts for our high census today. And again, 30 is our full census, so we have not reached that full capacity yet. We were close. I know from last time, there was a question about the parking lot. I just wanted to circle back with that, and that just to report that our lot has never had cars exceed the capacity. Just wanted to, for some reason, that question stuck out in my head. Another thing that I was asked to cover was an overview of police calls, fire calls, emergency response calls. So I called each department and really took it from the beginning of 2022, since the first couple months were just so slow anyways. So in 2022, so far, we've had 20 police calls. The types of calls are, just an overview, is ambulance assistance. We've had several residents call the police to report things that have been going on in their lives. One reported a fraud, one reported a theft. We've had trespassing. There was a need assistance for a person, walk and talk. I'm not sure what that is. We found drugs on our property and called the police. There was an animal case that was listed. I'm not sure what that was. There was an alarm, and then we've had some warrants. So that was just a list that came from the police station. We also had a very unique situation where one of our residents reported to us that a previous/current relationship that she was in, she witnessed this person commit a crime, actually commit a homicide. And so what we had to do is we had to pull in the Oconomowoc police, and then we ended up pulling in the Milwaukee police. During that time, he was not incarcerated, and he was considered a threat to our facility. So during that time, the Oconomowoc police would drive through our parking lot almost during every shift. And so also on that police report were 16 property checks. Okay, it's really nice when we see them drive through the parking lot. We appreciate and we wave every time they come by. And so overall, the police have been exceptional to meeting our needs. We had 4 ambulance calls. Twice it was because of a pregnant woman in distress. One was a broken ankle and a broken leg at the same time, and then a seizure. So those were the 4 ambulance calls. And then we had 3 fire calls. And again, this was from the records. One was because a fire drill was done incorrectly. So I guess was us trying to figure out the system, but I guess we needed to call and turn off something through a system. We have it figured out now. So the fire ended up coming, and we were just doing a fire drill. We had some smoke issues in our kitchen, and that was the other reason. Any questions on that? I know I just gave you a lot of information.
Thank you. Questions from council?
Yes.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
When you say 30 beds, is that 30 women plus if they have a baby? So you,
Right.
Okay.
So we're an adult facility, so we have 30 adult beds. When the infants are there, they're under their mother's care, and we have them in addition to the adults.
And I just want to say you guys are providing a much needed service.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alderman Kavieski.
If you could provide clarity, you're a nonprofit
Yes.
with tax exempt status. Is there a pilot program in place for your organization in the city?
I'm not clear on your question.
Payment in lieu of taxes.
No.
Oh, no. So right now, we don't own the building. We don't own the property. So the taxes are being paid through the landowner.
They're just leasing? Or
Right.
renting?
So we pay the taxes because it's part of what they charge us.
Triple that.
Yeah, so I will say, and maybe we should prepare for this, I mean, our plan is to purchase the building and the property. So I would be open to feedback on how we would need to proceed from there.
Alderman Rozak.
Was your name Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think you came last year, so you've only had about 7 months or so of actual operations?
Yes.
Okay, and how many residents you said you have right now there?
We have 20 as
20.
of today.
So I do think you're providing a needed service. The reason we put in some of these sections with regard to the review and the yearly review with the EMS was for exactly what you're telling us about. So for 20 people, we've had 20 calls for police service and,
No, right today, we have 20. Since the beginning of the year, we've had 86 admissions.
Come through, okay.
Right, so they cycle through, and the average length of stay has been 53 days. Yeah, so it's been, yeah.
Okay, so fair enough. So you've had 86 residents come and go during that period of time. That's still, however you factor it in, that's a police call per 4 people, give or take. That's a lot in my head. Part of what we put in this agreement in section 23 was, depending upon the concerns, complaints, was that we reserve the right to amend this conditional use. The goal of the full year review was to kind of figure out what these numbers really are and the effect of the community and our police and fire service. So what I'm going to recommend at the end, when we're done with questions, is that we add another year, full year review, that you come back again, so that we
Okay.
get that real full picture, because right now we're getting kind of just maybe 5 months, maybe 6 months. And I think it'd be important for us to get a real good full review from, July 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2023, till you come back. So we really can get a full grasp of a full season, winter, summer, the whole 9 yards. The other question so that's going to be my request. Would you be opposed to that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I'm happy to.
The next one was, section 27 said that you were supposed to meet with the fire district annually to see if there was a need for an elevator because of the amount of people on the second floor and access.
We do have an elevator, and when the ambulance did come, they were able to use the elevator. I guess I don't know if they have a new gurney, but the gurney.
It's called a stair chair. Yeah, it's a stair chair.
Fits, yeah, it's able to fit,
Okay.
so.
So that would be my only change to your conditional use permit. The numbers aren't, completely striking, but I think that's what we're here to do, is to monitor this. And I think an additional year review, if you're not opposed to that, would be, I think, adequate, so we get that full year picture.
Sure.
Which was the goal when we added that in, so.
Absolutely.
I think that's fair. If you're in agreement, then we'll get that scheduled
Absolutely.
for next year.
Absolutely.
Alderman Douglas.
So you say you have a state contract now?
Yes.
So are majority of the people staying there from the area? Are they coming from out of the area? Are they in the southeastern part of Wisconsin?
It really does vary. We do get, I would say, more than not that are in this area, because we need to look at relocation. So that would be between the Milwaukee and the Madison areas. We do have some outliers. It just depends on where the referrals come from.
Alderman Mulder?
Yeah, I was really interested in this project when you first started, so I'm glad to see that it's going well. And, Matt, those numbers, 20 is high. If we had an apartment building with that number of residents, we probably wouldn't have 20 in that time frame. And it may not have impacted our force, but if you think of those 56 people and those unfortunate 86 people in the, the unfortunate circumstances they find themselves in out in the public, think of the amount of resources we would have poured on to try to help them from across southeastern Wisconsin. It wouldn't have been all of Conomowoc, but I mean, I think this is an investment that as a city we can feel really good about having our services to help those women, so.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to think that some of the calls come out of us being new and really wanting to not make any mistakes, and be proactive. We have learned a lot over this year. We are still experiencing firsts. This was a huge undertaking, and we are still learning. But we do really appreciate, all the support that you've given. Absolutely.
I don't know how I would make that amendment. I guess I would just say in section 23, we could just put a footnote that we'd like an additional year of review. And that would be
That's
my
fine.
amendment to the CUP.
I think we're all in agreement. Alderman Shellpepper?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Chief, have we gotten any complaints from anyone in the, any constituents about the area? I mean, that was one of the parts of the review as well. We wanted to make sure if there were any coming in.
No, we haven't received any
Great.
complaints, so.
Perfect, thanks, Chief.
Good.
And I wanted to say to your question about where the referrals are coming from, I can have that prepared for next year to give you a better answer of where everyone's coming from.
Sure.
Because I wasn't able to give you a very good answer now.
Do you have any flyers or anything with you?
I didn't bring any with me, no. I can drop some off tomorrow if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay. There was just a couple more points that I had. I was asked to talk about any donations that we've received. I think we've had a pretty quiet year. We've been focusing on just trying to get our operation underground or underway. I think for the most part, Hope Church and Whitestone Church have been overwhelmingly supportive through just donations of baby items and food and monetary items. And also just various individuals have dropped off donations, which has been really awesome. The last thing I wanted to say is that we did post no trespassing signs throughout our property. We have some trails through the woods. What we noticed, and I think this is because our property was vacant for so long, that we had a lot of people walking through. And because of the nature of what we do, we're very protective, like who's coming on, whose car is that. And not even on our property, cars kind of park along the side. And I think, sometimes it's people just having lunch and they park along, it's a wooded area. So, but we are always very vigilant to see who's coming through, and we just decided we need to post because, we just
Great.
need to let people know.
Alderman Kavieski.
It is a great service that you provide. Just a little background for anybody that's watching. That property was originally rezoned for the ladders program.
Right.
That program was not successful in getting off the ground, so kudos for you for taking your program and getting it functional and providing that service to those women and mothers that are in need. So, thanks.
Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you next August.
All right, thank you very much.
Take care.
And thanks for moving me up on the list. I so much appreciate that.
You're welcome. We'll now move on to comments and suggestions from citizens.
Well, can I make, as a point of order, can I make that amendment to the CUP? Do we think we need to make that amendment to the CUP? Just to ask.
This was a discussion item and a report.
Oh.
So it's not an action item, but council, whatever you think is appropriate.
I think that there's been indication to staff to write a letter to this individual saying, we appreciate you coming back next year for another, per your agreement, and then put it on the agenda and have the invitation. If they don't show up, then
I'm fine with
that's gonna give an indication.
That's fine.
Okay, are you comfortable with that, Alderman?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. In the back of the room, there are blue cards. If you want to make a comment, the comments section, public comments section starts now. You have the opportunity to come to the podium, talk about any aspect of the anything you have in that's going on in the city. You have 3 minutes to share your opinion with the council. It's not a two-way dialogue. It's an opportunity for you to share what your thoughts are so that the council is aware. I do have one blue card. If anyone else would like to speak, we'd love to have you come up to the podium. So we'll start off. When you come to the podium, please state your name, your address, and what city you live in, please. First up is Jill. And Jill, I can't pronounce your last name. Balajaran. Thank you. So we're gonna, if things go real long, we'll just ask you to kind of wrap it up so it's not personal. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jill Belargin. I live at 675 South Worthington Street, right down the street from the municipal buildings. And I'm here to discuss the proprietary chemical formulas of drinking water treatment products.
Can you speak more into the microphone, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to make sure we have it on the tape.
Okay. Should I repeat that?
What?
Should I repeat what I
No,
said?
you're fine. Keep going.
I'm very concerned, as you all probably know from the email that I sent you. Grave concerns. And I would like the opportunity to meet with all of you again, because 3 minutes is nowhere near enough time to unpack all this information that I've gathered. This is 3,000 hours of trying to figure out what are in these proprietary chemical formulas of drinking water treatment products. And I think they're much more of a risk than they were ever proven to be a benefit to anybody. So, what I have asked you, Mr. Mayor, is to get these treatment products into the hands of our trusted scientific community so that they can determine exactly what's in these proprietary chemical formulas. Because the conversation that I had with Catherine Wunderlich of the DNR does not suffice for a good reason to be adding these chemicals to our drinking water. As I mentioned in that email, after begging her to help me understand why these are proprietary to our own DNR, whose very job it is to be able to detect, measure, and monitor chemicals in our drinking water, especially ones that are being intentionally added by our own water departments at the direction of our DNR. And Catherine Wunderlich, like I said, after begging her to help me understand why these are proprietary to the DNR, her excuse was that she understands the Karis Chemical Company has a right to keep their ingredients a secret from all of us, because if another chemical company were to find out their secret ingredients, they could become competition for the Karis Chemical Company. And this would not be fair to this Karis Chemical Company. She also stated that this is no different than the manufacturer of a barbecue sauce who has a right to keep their ingredients a secret from all of us. This is the explanation that I received from our DNR, who is supposed to be protecting our natural resources, and they have no idea what they're adding directly into them. Can't even explain how irresponsible, reckless this is. We are talking about thousands of people drinking these chemicals. And the Karis Chemical Company's own literature explained very clearly, however they chose to word it, that these are extremely detrimental to our health and our environment. They also did not keep the copper and lead from leaching into our drinking water systems, as this Karis Chemical Company claimed they would. And I have plenty of studies to prove that.
I'm going to have you kind of wrap up, please.
Again, I would like to have much further discussion on this matter. I would like to see these chemicals stopped, including the fluoride. But these phosphate blends, absolutely, 100%, and definitely the fluoride. So I would like to request another meeting with all of you to discuss this further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from anyone in the audience in the public comment section? With no comments being brought or blue cards being brought forward, let's move on to entertain a motion for the consent agenda item, the treasurer's reports and financials for July 2022.
So move, Kavieski.
Second, Schellbeber.
All in favor?
Aye.
On to committee reports, consider act on resolution 22-R 3057, awarding the contract for the Peacock Dam Maintenance Project. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, sir. Item before you tonight is for the maintenance of the Peacock Dam, which is located on North Lake Road up by the future Rockwell Park site. The dam was constructed over 80 years ago, and the face of it is deteriorated to the point where material is able to move through the wooden front that's there. We worked with both the DNR and an engineering firm, designed a repair for that, bid that project out, received 4 bids. Low bid was approximately $135,000 from Terra Engineering. Terra is a company that completely rebuilt our flume quite a few years back and did excellent work for us then. The project is eligible for a grant from the DNR, which we have applied for and will be receiving. That'll help offset the cost, 50% of it. So we're making a recommendation tonight for Terra Engineering to complete the project for $135,000 plus the 10% contingency, with a net cost of $148,476.
Questions or comments for Mr. Fry from council?
Just
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, just a couple number issues. So if we're going with the 134 plus what the other cost, we've received the grant application, so that's 50% up to $1 million. So we have to approve the amount, but then do we get the 50% back? How does that work?
Yeah, we'll pay the contractor, and
Okay.
then when the project's over, we will submit a pay application to the DNR, and they'll reimburse us.
What are the total, so we put in originally 150 grand, I think, for the Peacock Dam shoreline stuff, like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Then we put in some additional funds for the park. What's all in that, I mean, what is in our account right now? What have we spent? What do we have left? Do we know that? Do we have any?
So this is a completely separate project. This has nothing to do with the park.
Well, I understand that, but we originally put in 150,000 for the Peacock Dam and shoreline restoration, and then we used some of that money for funding, I believe at some point, the design proposals for the rest of the park for phase 1.
Demo.
So, right?
Correct.
Okay, so they're not separate.
Well, no.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get a handle on what we have in there, what we have left, what we're spending.
So the park at 517 has a separate budget for it, and that's the cost that you had just referenced.
Okay.
So the Peacock Dam is a completely separate project with its own budget. We have $165,000 for that project.
Okay.
And we will be within budget when we factor in the DNR grant.
No, that's not the park you mean for the Peacock Dam?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's,
Peacock
okay.
Dam.
The park at 517 should be separate, but we did spend portion, and I don't remember what the phase 1 design was, 40 grand, but we did spend money out of that 150 towards that. So I just want to make sure we have enough money left. It sounds like we do for the Peacock Dam, even without the grant.
We will, and we'll have Mr. Hepner go through that on the next item.
Good. I'm all
Alderman
for
Mulder?
this. I just was curious about the numbers.
The original 150 wasn't for the dam, though, that was for shoreline. Shoreline, right, not dam reconstruction, it was for shoreline development.
So we had a lot of numbers that bounced back and forth early on in this process. So we were looking at doing the dam a couple years ago, and there was money in there for that. Then we said, hey, let's not do the dam, we're gonna do the work at the park. So that's some of the dollars that you're referring to, Alderman Rozak.
Okay.
But since then, the park has its own budget, the Peacock Dam maintenance has its own budget. So tonight, we're talking about the $165,000 that we have budgeted for the Peacock Dam repairs.
Alderman Kavieski.
A couple things. We talked about this in committee. There are some people who would like to see the Oconomowoc sign brought back to the dam. That can be done at a future date if there's some fundraising done and some things like that.
Correct.
So these improvements are needed. I'm in complete support of that, but that could be an element that's added at a later date. This wouldn't preclude that. Just one final clarification, I guess, to Alderman Rozak's recollection. That $150,000 allocation was for earthen dam and shoreline improvements associated with specifically the 525 property. Since then, we've had the CSM, the 517 and 525 property was combined. There was healthy discussion on the floor here associated with that because those funds were then generalized for park improvements as opposed to the line items that they were authorized for, and portions of that allocation were spent on other things.
As long as we have enough money. As long as we have enough money in this fund.
Right.
Any other comments or questions with regard to the Peacock Dam maintenance project? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved, Ellis.
Mulder, second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
On to our next item, consider act on resolution 22-R3053, awarding the John and Lavinia Rockwell Park Phase 2 Design and Engineering Service Contract, Mr. Hepner. And maybe this will help bring all of these numbers and add some clarity to it, sir?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that because there's actually 3 different numbers. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. So as I start my 4th year here in Oconomowoc, I would say this is the most lively talked about park project we've worked on. And I think it will continue. So let's move on. I think part of that is because you've had hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens and community members be part of this project. They stepped up to donate $2 million to save 1.4 acres of parkland. So I give them a lot of credit. So I'm going to go back through it because I think it's important to go back through some of the history of this. So that started in August of 2020. So on July 20th of 2021, the Common Council approved the conceptual plan for John Lavinia Rockwell Park, which was a culmination of a year's worth of fundraising and community input and planning. I jumped into the process at about approximately January of that year, and so started working with these folks. In October of 2021, the Common Council approved our grading design contract with SEH for phase 1 of the park project. And that included shoreline restoration, kayak launch construction, general grading, and the DNR permitting process. So they completed their design work. We bid this back out, as mentioned, at committee in April of this year. In May, we received one bid. It was well above our cost estimate, so that bid was rejected. We worked with SEH to find out with contractors potential of why they didn't bid. Obviously, they're busy, timing, all that kind of thing. So we've worked behind the scenes to do some soil boring, some design with a Ready Rock Wall company to make it a little more specific on what they would be bidding on. We also talked about doing this in winter because the shoreline restoration and grading can easily be done that. So the plan is to rebid it for a November to March timeline for phase 1 construction. All right, so that's phase 1. Our goal to complete the entire park, as the concept plan shows, is to do this by July 1st of 2023. To do that, phase 2 is the second and final phase, and we need to work on design for that now. Phase 2 includes everything else, and there's a lot included. It's all plans, specs, the bidding documents, the bidding process for the dam overlook area, not the dam, the front porch feature, the back porch feature, restrooms, boardwalk, drop-off area, restoration, pathways, kayak ramp, the boathouse being converted, et cetera, et cetera. So everything else in the plan is as part of phase 2. Based on the current market challenges with pricing, we plan to obviously do this as a line item bid, which we did for phase 1, but we want to do that again for phase 2, so we have some flexibility in the final approval process. Phase 2 construction would be bid out this winter in hopes that it would start in March or April of 2023 and be completed in July. So the cost of design engineering for phase 2 is $85,000. We're proposing that 50% of that, so $42,500 would come from the city account, and the other remaining 50% would come from the Friends of Rockwell Park funds. As I mentioned before, we do have the DNR permit in hand. We're waiting to hear on the DNR grant for funding, which should happen in September. So let's go back to the accounts. There's 2 accounts and monies set aside for this project. One was $150,000, not the dam project, that's separate. So of the 150, we've spent approximately $62,000. The first 30 was on asbestos and demolition, and the other 32 was phase 1 design. So that leaves about $88,000 of the 150. We also have $300,000 separate in the budget for this project to go towards the construction process, namely shoreline restoration, et cetera. So out of $450,000 set aside for this project, we have approximately $388,000 of it remaining. So that's where we stand with finances. And again, we have not moved into construction because of what I mentioned with bidding. So happy to try and clear up anything else or answer questions as we go through the process and have a good conversation.
Alderman Douglas.
All right, so phase 1. What was the cost estimate for phase 1?
Approximately $400,000.
What'd the bid come in at?
$678,000.
We don't even have enough money between our account and the Friends to even do phase 1?
Not quite.
Yeah, correct.
Then we want to start on phase 2 and we don't have the funds to do phase 1?
Phase 2 design, correct. So as I mentioned in the committee, this is a similar thing where the Friends group is planning on doing a large amount of fundraising. They're in the process. They've talked about raising 600 to 700, possibly more, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the project. We're also waiting on the grant to come in this fall. But to keep things moving, if we want to try and complete the park by July 1st, that's why we'd be moving forward with design for Phase 2.
I guess I don't understand why we're gonna do design for Phase 2 if we can't even complete Phase 1 at this point.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
I don't want to cut off Douglas if he's still going.
Rhetorical question, I guess.
So I guess my questions are a little bit similar to Douglas's. And this is, obviously I wasn't here a year ago. So you had mentioned 2 million was donated. Was that just to buy the property?
That's correct.
So that's gone.
Correct. That was used to
And
purchase
spent.
the property. The 2 parcels.
So pretty much you're asking for us to approve this, for the city to cough up 42,500 on a maybe that the rest of the money is going to get fundraised.
Yeah, and I can jump in. I think the group feels fairly confident that money will come in.
Okay,
Yeah,
but, I mean,
it's-
not to be rude then.
No,
Can
no.
you-
and-
I mean, I understand you want, the timelines here, but can you come back when the money's in hand?
Well, we could. That's going to delay the project at least a year. And so the goal is it's difficult to fundraise unless you have the pieces in place that people can move forward on it. And so that's what you as a council have to decide. So if you decide not to fund this, you definitely postpone it a year. And most likely the fundraising, for the most part, will stop and then have to be kicked on. And there's a lot of momentum right now to finish it. And there have been several verbal commitments, and the group is working to commit those. So that's why the Friends said, hey, they feel strongly that.
So if we were to vote this down today,
Mhm,
I know you said it could ruin the momentum of the fundraising,
correct.
but we could also get this back on the agenda in a month if that kind of lights a fire under them.
Well, you don't have to light the fire under the people fundraising. They're kicking it off this weekend on the 20th. And so there's a artist that's donated a $20,000 painting. There's all sorts of things.
Respectfully, why wasn't this on the agenda for the next meeting, not today?
We're just trying to get things into the queue. I mean, it takes time to fundraise, and it's going to take several months, but we're not going to build anything with money we don't have, the same way we've done all the other projects. So the question is whether you as a council, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, we're willing to invest here for this to happen. We may come in the spring and you look at it and the bids come up with crazy. Then maybe you phase in the development. It doesn't happen in July, but you can't do anything without a plan. And that's what the request is, because in the timing of it, it's the right time to do it. Alderman Kavieski.
All right, so if I remember in the timeline, the community was provided a period of time to raise the $1.35 million by the end of January of 2021, which was successful. Pat Harrow and her family purchased property at 525 and dedicated that back, which is how you come up to the $2 million. But after the end of January of 2021, phasing, the second phase to fundraise for park improvements kicked in, or should have been an active part of the next phase. So now we're into the end of 2022, and there's $150,000 that has been raised. So quite some time has passed, and out of that $150,000, approximately 100 of that has come through the OAF participation. So I understand that fundraising efforts kind of take some time, but it's been some time, and the momentum, it doesn't seem obvious here that there's a growing fund.
So
and I
I'm
don't
going
want
to interrupt you if it's okay. The group quit the fundraising because we saw the $250,000 grant and said, let's delay the fundraising until we're close to getting that grant and then kick it off. Plus, it was delayed 8 months because of the timing to do the Peacock Dam. So that's maybe why you felt that way or saw that, but please continue.
I appreciate the information associated with that, and I'm not trying to, poo-poo this necessarily, but I would feel more comfortable moving on to phase two if there was funding associated to complete phase one, and if we had and I get it, because we fundraise for the skate park, and we're going through that with other elements. And there is a conceptual plan that can be used for fundraising now. It's not like there's no idea of what this is potentially gonna be. So, you know, for those reasons, I'd like, God bless them, go raise money, go get it all, go get the grant. But I'm not in favor of spending additional money on a phase two, and we're not even there on phase one. If we were hitting phase one and going into phase two, I'd be maybe a little bit different on it, but I'm not right now.
Well, the goal on phase one is that we'll get a bid much lower because the first bid wasn't acceptable. So coming back to the concept, do we have the money for phase one? We feel that we do based on a winter build, but we don't know. And so what we're trying to do is key all of these things up. If you do not move this forward, you are going to have it will have a severe effect on the fundraising capabilities of this group, because they want to continue and they're ready to go and they are ramped up to go, and I'm confident they'll be successful. I mean, they're already putting $42,500 in, half of it, because they want to have the same partnership with everybody, with the city, as they've already had. Alderman Mulder.
Yeah, I guess I understand that the hesitancy, because we may not be able to fund phase two, I guess, is you don't want to take a look at that until phase one is funded. But this has been the way we have been approaching these projects, is that we have been putting plans in place and fundraising to meet those and not spending any taxpayer dollars until we have those funds. And this is the exact same thing. So I'm confused as to why we're willing to delay this particular project, where the community has spoken loudly with $2 million in the past. It resulted in the development of the Friends of the Park. I think that the momentum of this, of the city seeing what it can do as a community, you know, continues with things like the splash pad, and we've kind of built something out of this to put a stop, or no, I know you're not putting a stop, to put a pause on something here where it feels very arbitrary to me when there is no, we're not talking about spending money we haven't raised yet. We're spending money that has been appropriated towards this, and we won't spend any money until it has been raised. So it feels very arbitrary that we're, and to me, the skate park serves a very small part of our community. Lots of kids, my neighbors there all the time, but this serves a huge part of the community, and thousands of people, at least hundreds, probably hundreds, not thousands, spoke with their pocketbooks and said, we want this done. I don't see why we as a council are now saying, no, we're not ready to move it forward. It feels arbitrary to me. I'm in favor of it, and I think it's a big mistake to not.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
I also feel confident that we have the support to raise the money, just knowing a lot of people who are involved in the Friends of the Park and talking to other individuals who were associated with either raising funds or putting funds towards the 517. And I think that if we approve this tonight, it keeps that excitement going for individuals. It says, we trust in you, we want to do this, we're with you, we're partnering with you, and it's an impetus to keep the fundraising going and keep that excitement rolling this forward.
Alderman Ellis.
The only concern I have with that, and I absolutely agree, is we don't have enough cash at this point in time to finish phase one. And so by us saying, let's go ahead and do this, my concern is that some may say, okay, well, if we can't come up with all the funds, the city will, you know, cut the check.
Say that, but we
You
won't.
can say that, but we won't, and that's never been a discussion that we want to do as a city.
I understand that. I absolutely understand that, but there's a lot of people that don't. Okay? And so that's my only dilemma with this. We don't have enough money for phase two. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. But what I'm saying is.
I want us to be clear, we don't have enough money for phase one.
Phase one, I'm sorry, phase one.
Based on a bid that we rejected, guys. that's why we've shifted and we've changed the agenda.
As a point of order, Mayor, I appreciate the comments, but you're only commenting after certain people if you disagree with their position. So if this is going to be a fair and open debate of the council, I think you should let us debate. I have never objected to you commenting at some point during the discussion, but if every time I say a comment you don't agree with, or Lou or anybody, and you interject, this is going to take forever.
If I want to have it be part of the debate, I'll remove my seat and step down.
I'm not asking you to do that.
I respect your opinion.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to do
I'm
that.
just trying to make sure that the facts are out there so that when you make a decision, it's an informed decision. And
I've never asked you to
I'm
step
also
down.
a member. I'm also a
never asked
member
you
of
to step down.
council too, so I want you to
No,
respect that.
But as a member, as the mayor of the council, you have a duty to control the debate. If you keep interjecting yourself in the debate, you're not actually being a fair and impartial person in the debate. So I've never asked you to step down. I won't ask you to step down. I feel you should give your opinion because you've been a valuable part of this process. But if every time Kevin says something you don't agree with, or I do, and then you jump in, that's just, now I got to make another comment. And then someone else got to make another comment, so.
And then the comical thing is that I have people that say I don't say enough during the council. So it kind of goes in a circle. So I respect the opinion, don't always agree with it, Matt.
I understand.
But as a point of order, let's continue the debate. Alderman Kavieski.
Cool. So I have a question for clarity. So with $150,000 in the Friends account and approximately $388,000 in the city account, we're right around $500,000 or $530,000-ish. And we're looking to approve a design contract for Phase 2 in the amount of
85,000.
right? So that would come out of, half of that would come out of the city fund, half of that would come out of the fundraised dollar amount, bringing us down to approximately $450,000-ish, right? I don't have a calculator here, but that's not even really
Ballpark, yep.
to where we would need to be to complete Phase 1 based on an initial budget, let alone the single bid that came in at $600,000. So again, I'd go back and say, if we were there and we had some extra money to help pay for half of the design for Phase 2 and the Friends had money to contribute that and we could continue moving forward, I'd be okay with it, but we're not there yet. So and again, I get there's a disagreement with that, and I don't want there to be a thought that we wouldn't continue to support this project with fundraising, and I believe they have tools to go and do that, and they've been fundraising since the end of January of 2021. We could talk about this all night. This is just my last comment on it, and that's the reason I'm voting.
You promise, Lou.
Yeah.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Before we vote, and as you consider what your vote will be, I'd like to first, number one, say, please consider what your motivation, what your really deep motivation is for this vote. And secondly, I'd like to say that my vote motivation is based on what I hear from my constituents, and I've had a lot of people saying to me, we want to go forward with this park. We'd like to enjoy this park as a city. And that's where my vote will lie tonight.
Alderman Rozak.
Thank you, Mayor. So just so we're clear, Craig, and I hate to bring you back up in the numbers, but I was trying to take the notes. My understanding is we have account number 1 with 150 grand in it. We used 62 for demo and 32 for miscellaneous stuff.
We used 30 for demo and 32 for SEH Phase 1 design. So 62 total of the 150.
Oh, and so that leaves the 88.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then we have the second account, which is 300 grand in it right now.
Correct.
That's the money that the council a year and a half ago put in during budget cycle.
Yes.
Out of our reserves. Okay. So that leaves us $388,000. The Phase 1 budget to complete the Phase 1 was 400. And we know that it's overbid. We hope that when we go out for bid that it comes back in a decent price. That's where I think I start kind of going sideways. I'm all for the project. I think I voted for the conceptual plan. I don't remember because that was a long time ago. Maybe I didn't. But we have a very significant conceptual plan to fundraise off of. When we had voted on the conceptual plan, the same debate occurred, which is if we don't vote for the conceptual plan, there'll be nothing to fundraise off of. We have the conceptual plan. We know what's supposed to go in there and what will ultimately happen. I don't think it's fiscally responsible to move forward with phase 2 engineering until phase 1, at least we're funded, we know what we have. I don't think it's a rush. I don't think Fowler was built in a year. I don't think a lot of the parks, I mean, Northeast Regional Park has been a 5-6 year process, and we got nothing in there yet. We have pickleball courts that aren't completed in a trail. So, and that was a multi-million-dollar project as well. So my motivation is continue moving down the road, but there's no rush. You know, if there's time and we don't have the money even to complete phase 1, I don't think we should do it. I don't think it's right. I don't think you should spend the money until you have it, at least on the second phase. That's just my thoughts.
Alderman Ellis?
Yeah.
I am for this project. I understand what you're saying, Karen, I absolutely do. But where I'm kind of questioning my approach to this is that we cannot even finish phase 1 at this point. Now, it's only because of the bid that we received, which was higher than we anticipated. But still, even then, we have a bit of a shortfall. Is it at all possible that we can table this for a month and see what type of funding happens? Or if we can get any type of movement that way?
So
Where
what the reasons on the agenda, or let me go,
Can I
Mr.
finish?
Fry.
Can I finish?
Oh, did you finish?
No, I
Okay.
did not, I'm sorry.
Please complete.
Thank you. So that when a month from now we come back, you could say, hey, we were able to raise another 20, 25, 30, 10, $50,000.
Hopefully hundreds.
All right, well, 100,000, 200,
And hopefully we have some
500,000.
knowledge on the grant that's sitting out there as well. I'm not going to disagree. We're trying to keep things moving.
It's
We'd
not a
like to
matter-
see something happen, obviously. The cool thing is the park's being used.
Right.
Now, it's
and-
not
and the thing-
ideal, but it's,
let me
people want to
finish.
use it.
Let me finish.
Okay.
It's not that we don't want it to happen. It's not that we don't want to slow that train down. It's just that we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible so that at the end of the day, there's no deficit. And we don't have to come up with more than we anticipated. That's where I'm coming from at this point.
Mr. Fry?
So when we look at these projects, and this has been one that, as Craig mentioned, has been in front of the council for quite some time with a lot of conversation to it. So what we're looking for tonight is to complete the design of the park. So we went out, we did phase 1, we decided to break it up because there was concerns about money at that time also. We have ample funds for the phase 1 design and phase 2 design. And quite frankly, in order to get costs and be able to bid at a time of the year where it's conducive to better numbers is the reason why we should be moving forward with this tonight. We did reach out and get the Friends to commit to half of the dollars. We felt that would help with the council's discussion and approval of it, that it wasn't the city putting up the entire amount, that the Friends were putting up their portion of it too. But one of the things that happens as these projects go along, that, unless the community is feeling, a lot of support, true support of what, moving forward with this park, it's hard to get people to commit any major donations to it. So by moving ahead, we get the design done, and no different than anything else. I mean, just about every project that I've ever stood in front of this council on, if we didn't have the money, we didn't build it. We have enough funds, and that includes the Friends, in order to pay for the design of the park. We would have completed plans, completed specifications. We'd be able to get the cost on it. We could put that cost out there and have it known in the public so they know how much money they have to raise. And then if those dollars aren't there, we don't build it. We can come back. We have plans. We're all ready to go. We can come back at any time. But all we're looking for tonight is to get the design done of phase 2 so that we can then go out and see what our final costs are going to be on this, is what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not trying to force, We're not trying to force the council into saying, hey, you approved the design, now you got to approve construction, no matter what the cost is. That is not the, our goal here tonight.
What you're really asking is, do you want to give this level of confidence to the community to help continue with the fundraising? That's one perspective, and that's something you have to
The only way we can give them confidence
vote
is
this through.
by telling them that we're going to commit to this amount of money?
Yeah, because how do we know exactly how much to raise until we have all the design costs done? And we have to still, if everything goes well, we'll have the grant from the DNR in September, which will easily cover phase one. So all we're trying to do is schedule this. Nothing will be built without the cash in hand. Nothing will be built without council approval. What we're trying to do is get those things into the queue so that it can be done in a timely fashion. And the fundraising group is ready. They made a decision to kind of hold off until we got closer, and now they're ramping up again. And what the request from the Friends group and gone through with the Park and Rec department is, let's take this to the next level and let's get the next set of designs in. That's really what you're offering, and you're putting at risk $42,500. That's what's being asked of the council, and you have the money already allocated to do that. No different than several of the other projects where the funds weren't fully raised. There were fundraising efforts. I mean, this group already, raised well over $2 million. They can do the rest of it. And so it's really a timing issue is what I think I'm hearing from you. And I would just strongly recommend that you push this forward. Alderman Douglas.
I guess I would disagree that the only thing out there is $42,000, because you have the Friends and us for a total of 85, where if we don't move forward on the phase 2 engineering, if the bid comes in $100,000 less than the one bid we have the money to do phase 1. By spending $85,000, it takes us to outside of phase 1 where we don't have the money to do phase 1. So actually phase 1 is actually what's at risk.
We also have the DNR grant that we're going to hear about in September. Granted, we don't know. We've submitted. We do not know. But once again, we do have enough funds in order to complete the design of the park. And that would have the project ready to go for us to be able to bid when it's conducive to see what those numbers are going to come in at. We can't do it without a final design.
We can't do phase 2 design until we do phase 1.
Well, so the reason why there's two different design things, we looked at the grading portion of it, doing the shoreline work and that initial work. That's the only reason why we broke it up. We could actually do the entire project at the same time under a single bid, but we'd have to have it designed and ready to go.
Alderman Cloth.
Oh, he was pointing for first.
Good.
I think Alderman
I yield
Cloth
the
was
floor.
first.
Thank you, Mr.
She had
Mulder.
raised before.
At this point, I feel like we're starting to have the same conversation over and over again, kind of asking the same questions. So can we either take the vote or table it for next month?
Alderman Mulder.
Was that a request to call?
No, I mean, those,
Make a motion anytime
you
she
can make
wants.
a motion anytime you want. I know Alderman Mulder had something to say, but if you want to make a motion, that's fine. So
She didn't. I can do the math. I don't feel like we're having a debate. I feel like that their decisions were made beforehand, so we're all wasting our breath. We can see where the vote's going to come down. I don't think there's anybody sitting here that doesn't believe we can't raise the $100,000 we need to complete phase 1 in a timely manner in order to pay those bills in January when they start. This is not a fundraising issue. We will raise the money. If we don't, we won't put a shovel in the ground. There's no way we don't have the money in time, even if we don't get the grant, which we're feeling confident we will. I don't understand the hesitancy here. What we're really putting in jeopardy is not being able next 4th of July to have a park full of people watching the fireworks. Instead, we'll have half a park again, and then we'll be delayed because we can't even get, then phase 2 is gonna come in higher because we won't be able to take it out to bid until April when all of the work has already been scheduled by these contractors, so then we'll be doing it next fall. So we're really looking at having phase 2 done in spring of 2024. Because we're pretending At least in my mind, I think we all know we're gonna raise that money. I don't see any way we're not. We've raised the money every single time. If we don't raise the money, we won't put shovel in the ground. I don't understand the question here. That's my opinion.
Alderman Ellis?
I'd like to make a motion to table this until we hear more word about the grant. And the fundraising.
Do we have a second? With no second provided, the motion fails. I'd like to entertain another motion.
I'll move forward with that with the resolution to move forward with the design service contract.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Nay.
Alderman Kavieski.
Nay.
Alderman Douglas.
Nay.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Motion fails.
Could have tabled it.
First time I've been embarrassed.
Let's move on to our next item.
They tabled it.
On the Plan Commission, consider an act on extraterritorial certified survey map to divide one lot into two at North 7121 Ski Slide Road, Town of Concord. Mr. Gallo.
Hello, we have an application to divide out one lot from a 20-acre site. The lot would be about 2 acres in size. This is actually in the town of Concord. It is in our extraterritorial plating jurisdictional area. It's about a half a mile from the city boundaries. A map is included in your staff report showing where it is. It's west of the city. The lot that's being created has a couple of storage buildings on it. It's 2 acres in size. They would like to just divide that out for a sale. The Plan Commission reviewed this. They did recommend a recommendation to the council to approve the certified survey map.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Gallo? Like to entertain a motion, please?
So moved, Ellis.
Second, Altman Cloth.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
On to our next item. Consider act on ordinance 22-01038, creating section 17-116 wetland regulations and amending section 17.904 definitions of the city zoning ordinance.
Thank you. This is a text amendment. It affects the wetland setback. It creates a wetland setback. It also creates 2 definitions. So there's 2 different sections of the zoning code. We held a public hearing earlier on this. No one spoke. We did have a presentation by Planning Department staff. Plan Commission did talk about this at length. They had a couple of amendments, which I put in bold in your copies in your packets. One, they thought this was a very good idea, but they would like to see stormwater management facilities in that wetland setback. Usually, stormwater goes where the water drains lowest, which is near the wetland. It would not be in a wetland. It would not impact the wetland, but it would be allowed within that 10-foot, like a bioswale or a stormwater management pond could go right up to that, a rain garden, et cetera. They also talked about invasive vegetations. Tree cutting was prohibited, but it says unless it's an invasive species like a buckthorn or something, then it could be cut. So they asked that those 2 things. From a personal standpoint, I think this is a good ordinance. I did have this in my prior community in the village of Germantown. We had a 10-foot wetland setback. 10 feet is a good balance. It's not an excessive amount of land, but if someone is building something right up to a wetland, you want to make sure that, number one, they can build a garage, a shed, whatever it is, and then 2, they want to maintain it. So they want a 10-foot area to get on that side for painting and whatever without disturbing and patting down the wetlands. So it's not a complete no-touch zone. There's some listed as permitted uses listed in the code, like utilities. I talked with our staff at length. They can go in and put utilities in. You can also plant grass. You can cut the grass. It's just a no really a building area. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
What was the impetus? Why did we decide now's the time? It's such an important ordinance.
Well, it's in our comprehensive plan. It talks about creating a wetland setback. We have an intern this summer. I had her do some research. This was one of the projects I've been meaning to do for a long time. We've had some subdivisions come in that are adjacent to wetlands. I think it's a good idea to have this on the books.
Have we had any actual issues that have resulted in the city that you can point to other than, you know, the map because things look a little funny or whatever? You know, has there been actual problems that have resulted from buildings?
No, I don't
being
really
too
anticipate
close?
any problems. I think this is something that we'd have on the books as a security blanket in case there is a problem. Then we can say, hey, we have a wetland setback and you violated it. We have a lot of things, a creep factor, where people are actually putting like fire pits and gardens and things off their property, and people start to cut into a wetland and stuff. So I think this would be good to have for an enforcement purpose. If
How many
we could.
wetlands of quarter acre size or more do you think we have in the city?
Oh, a lot.
That's hard to really, wetlands aren't like pieces, they're big. And we have a lot of areas where there's going to be, like Arrowwood subdivision is along the Oconomowoc River, and there's other lands that are undeveloped down in the west side. It's all wetlands down there. So we want to make sure that this is in place for that.
Alderman Kavieski.
Recently, there was a Park and Rec meeting on yesterday, and we talked about the area over at Roosevelt where potentially a dog park and things that's all wetlands back in there. None of this would prohibit the utilization from a city standpoint for activity like that?
No, generally for like a dog park, there's not really any structures built. I'm not sure of any.
Fencing, stuff like that
That would be
okay?
allowed to have a dog running around through there, sure.
I got a couple of
Fencing's
things.
okay? Can you just clarify?
Yeah.
But it's not.
And if something like that were to come that would need a variance, so to speak, that could be done because this is an ordinance that we're creating. I understand, and actually I appreciate and I support this. I think clarity and following up on things that are in the comp plan are important. So I'm going to be in favor of this. I'd like to see the historic preservation aspect of getting into compliance come back to this body as well, sooner than later. So that's my 2 cents.
I can't remember. Alderman Altman-Cloth, I think, and then
It was Douglas was next.
Douglas first.
I just want to be clear, on the prohibited uses, it does say fences, so you can't fence in the dog park unless we give a variance to that, correct?
That's something we'd probably have to take a look at unless you want to just remove fences right now. It's something we could do, but generally when you put a fence in, you're digging holes and stuff, so we said it wouldn't be allowed.
And then I guess my second question is, you're talking specifically about wetlands, not environmental corridor area that this set by the county, right? Specifically
Right, this
wetlands.
is specifically for wetlands. But not, an environmental corridor consists of a whole bunch of things. Steep slopes is critical habitat is a tree. So no, this is just strictly wetlands.
Jennifer, or Altman-Cloth, please.
Without sounding biased, because I am one of the aldermen working on the dog park at Roosevelt, can we, do fences really impact the wetland? I mean, I get the structures, not putting a house, a building, but fences,
Well, keep in mind, this is not even stuff that would be allowed in a wetland. This is stuff in the 10-foot
Or 10
setback.
feet, yes.
So, I guess a fence 10 feet from a wetland, we could probably remove that. I don't really have a problem with that.
Alderman Rozak.
I mean, whenever we consider a very broad, wide-based ordinance like this, what we have to consider is how this is going to affect current landowners. The first thing we're doing is right now, what we're looking at is creating a ton of illegal non-conforming uses, which typically I think is not something zoning wants to do. The other thing we're doing is there's a lot of really broad language in here that I think needs to be cleaned up, and I don't know that we have the time, the energy, or the wherewithal to do that tonight. For instance, the definitions is actually the critical part of this entire statute or ordinance, and that's the land disturbing activity. Any human-made land alterations, disturbances, and then it goes on to say clearing, grubbing, grading, excavating, but not limited thereto. That's really broad. And it's not in the wetland. It's another 10 feet beyond wherever that wetland designation is. We're not going to allow people to do those things that, as of yesterday, they maybe could have done with their properties. So I think we need to tighten up the language. I don't mind some of the actual prohibited uses. Permanent playground equipment, fences, flagpoles, some of that makes sense to me. But when we broaden that language to any land disturbances, no filling, flooding, dredge, you're talking about much broader language that's going to eliminate people really literally doing anything in that 10-foot setback that currently they're allowed to do. And what is the impetus? I mean, it was part of our strategic plan. There's all sorts of things in our strategic plan we completely ignore and don't get to or don't do, or in comprehensive land use plans, we simply reject, ignore if it's a pet project. So I think we need to clean it up. I think we need to get rid of some of that more broad language and stick really close to the prohibited uses and not that broader language. If we want to make something that's fair for the current landowners and it's not too broad, I'm okay with this overall structure, but I think we need to limit that language. I could do that tonight, but it's going to take a while. I prefer that my suggestion is we postpone this for a meeting and let me work on the language, because I personally think it's really broad, and I just didn't have time to look at it in detail before the meeting.
Alderman Mulder.
I'd be interested to hear what you usually like to defer to you on some of that, then you're reading through these things that I don't catch based on your background. I do think our city is, life comes naturally here. I think preserving the natural part of this community is really important to everybody in this community, so I applaud you for doing this. Rachel, you did an excellent job. The second time you presented to us, and
Excellent.
I hope we have a job here when you graduate, because you do a great job, so.
We could fire Jason tonight. We could fire Jason tonight. We got everybody here
What
to
are
vote,
your wage
right?
requirements, Rachel? We do need $80-some thousand
Get
to
on.
fund
Please.
phase 2.
Isn't by keeping you on, yeah.
Rockwell? Oh, never mind. Too soon for humor? I'm sorry.
So I think that it's, I'd be open to that, Matt. I do think it's important that we do this. We do have, probably 3/4 mile along the Oconomowoc River being developed in Arrowwood, and while my neighborhood doesn't have wetlands, I know that the people that back up to common spaces, mow approximately 3 feet further back every single year and move their fire pits. So those lands will be reclaimed if we don't, protect, and that's with the type of rain events we've been having, hail events we've been having, certainly talking about protecting property owners. I think that's a really salient point in this as well.
What would you, motion to postpone, would you?
Just wait, I have one more. Alderman Kavieski.
That was going to be my motion, actually. In the best interest of moving this to a point of approval, I'd like to make a motion to postpone until which time council can review and make suggestions for alterations.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work with Alderman Rozak on bringing updates back to the council when we're satisfied with something.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Alderman Spiegelberg.
Just one, it's a very small technicality, but it's a technicality on the staffing report that was approved by everyone. The verbiage says 1/4 acre in size or greater, but on the actual ordinance, it says greater than 1/4 acre. So just to clarify which one that is. Okay.
Good catch.
Which one is that in section 3?
Section 3, yep.
Okay,
So if it's the greater than 1/4 acres, that's fine, but the plan staffing report says 1/4 acre in size or greater.
I see. Okay, so I'll
Alderman
make that-
Mulder.
One more comment as you work through this, the fencing, I do think there's some maybe reason to not have fencing be excluded from this, but I also understand the dog park, and what I don't want to have is have this codified, and then the first thing we do is vote to do what we want to do,
Exception, yeah.
but nobody else can do. So I don't know if there's an elegant way to work around that really, but, you know, it could be for the public good versus the individual property owner. Perhaps there's a way to work that in there, but I can see that we're gonna butt heads right there. So let's try to figure that out before we
could put like a public use exception in that section.
yeah, something like that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
On to a presentation and discussion on the Planning Department's updated housing study for the city of Oconomowoc.
Well, this is Rachel's last meeting. Her last day at the city is Friday, and she worked very hard on a housing study update. This was done in 2000, well, she'll give the updates, but the last time I reported this to you was 5 years ago, and she's now taken a comprehensive spreadsheet, and she's put every development in there since 2014. Some have since changed over since I've, even in those earlier ones. So she's going to just give a brief presentation showing you kind of where we're at with the housing in the city.
Hi, again. I'm really excited to share this with you, not just because we worked really hard on it, but also because I think that it's a tool that will be really useful to you in, you know, in the future decision-making that you guys do. So as Jason said, we did build this study off of previous housing studies that have been conducted by the department. So I used the 2013 study as a starting point for this, and back in those days, we classified our housing mix by single family versus multifamily. And since then, the comprehensive plan has seen updates, and we now classify things by owner-occupied versus renter-occupied. So there has been that terminology change, which is one of the really big reasons that we felt now was a good time to do this study, because we didn't have any numbers for those new, you know, terminologies in the way that we defined our housing mix policy now. So that's kind of the background of why right now is a good time to do this study. We did go through and we adjusted the 2013 study numbers. So they had it, like I said, in single family versus multifamily. We went through and we took all the condominium units. Condominium units were the key to this study because for the most part, we could take the single family and move that into owner occupied, and we could take the multifamily and take that into renter occupied. But condominium units that were classified as multi are now owner, so it got a little bit confusing there. But to get these adjusted renter-owner numbers for 2013, we took the condominium units out of that multifamily category and moved it on over to owner-occupied. So that's why these percentages here are different from what you might see if you looked at the actual 2013 study. These are the adjusted numbers. So in 2013, we had about 26.4 renter-occupied. 26.4% of our housing units were renter-occupied. And now in 2022, that number comes to 28.1. So we've seen a slight increase. And I know that at first glance, this might appear that it's not, you know, oh, well, we haven't really been making progress, but I do want to remind you that the comprehensive plan only got updated in 2019 to include that new terminology. So this isn't something that the city, you know, has been looking at and saying, oh, we need to have more renter-occupied units. That's not something we've been really looking at before now. So it does make sense that we haven't seen a huge change or shift in this number. Here's the kind of summary statistics. We have just under 10,000 housing units in the city, 28% about are renter-occupied. We have a total of 887 condominium units. And I have that 60-40 split number here in this presentation and in the study. I do want to point out that there is, in the housing goals page of the comprehensive plan, there is no explicit goal that says we want 60% owner-occupied, 40% renter-occupied, but it is implied in the housing mix policy section. It does say, you know, in 2013, we established the policy to maintain the single-family, 60% single-family units and 40% multifamily. And then it goes on to say that after, reviewing this policy, we're modifying that to define it by owner versus renter. So that's why the 60-40 number is in here, because it's still something that's kind of implied that the city has as a goal. And that's something that maybe this study, after looking at this study, that's something we need to reevaluate. Maybe we want to change it to something that's not 60-40, maybe want to move it to 70-30 or something, but that's kind of the point of the study, was to kind of show you where we're at in relation to that. So in order to achieve that, we would have to approve nearly 2,000 additional renter-occupied units, which is quite extensive. I wanted to put this graph up here just to kind of show you, you can kind of see the slopes of the increase in renter-occupied and the increase in owner-occupied. You can see in many years, there's been more owner-occupied approvals than renter-occupied. I think that there has been 3 years that there have been more renter than owner-occupied housing units approved. So that's just kind of to give you an idea of how the city has been, approving units and the direction that we're headed in. And then I wanted to just throw this part in here about, this is directly from the comprehensive plan. It shows you that housing mix policy. It shows you the goals that we have, one of them being to inventory the existing housing stock, which is what this study does. Planning staff, now that we have these numbers, planning staff is hoping to, when we get proposals for new developments, we want to add them to these numbers and see, okay, how would this affect our percentages? So that's something that the planning department will continue to build on and hopefully present to you when we get these new developments, so you guys can use that information to kind of aid in your decision making. I did want to point out one thing to conclude here, that when we presented this to Plan Commission, they had a very lengthy discussion about how we're measuring housing and if it's a good idea to measure it by renter versus owner. And they said, well, I know that we just changed it to renter versus owner, but maybe it would be a good idea to combine these metrics and have the renter owner and the single multi metrics and use them both. So in your packets on that housing inventory spreadsheet, we did include at the bottom what the numbers would be if we measured them in single versus multi. So that's much closer to that 60-40 split. So you can kind of use that and see as well. And maybe that'll help you in your future decision making. So this study, again, is supposed to be a tool for you to use. It's not, an action item, but we can open to discussion if you guys have questions or anything.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Great job, and we're going to miss you. You've done a wonderful job this summer. Alderman Kavieski.
I echo that, Mayor. It's nice to be able to give the resources to the department, and you've done a very professional job, and I hope this experience helps to get you a job someplace maybe really close sometime. But this topic actually is something that comes up fairly regularly, and I've had some conversation with both residents and Alderman Altman-Cloth in regards to this. So I'm glad to see the separation of the condos from the multifamily. It's interesting, on occasion you'll hear the Okandamo walk, and when I have discussion with people and I say it's about 5% of our housing mix, and they're like, no way. I'm like, way. It's not as significant as most people think. And just last week I had a conversation with somebody, and they're like, I would think maybe 40% of our housing is condos. I'm like, nope, you're way off. So to have that validated is really good, and I think having that identified in the comp plan maybe a little bit more clearly, I think would be beneficial for the community as a whole, as well as those developers who come in. We're on track, and this community, through planning and through action of this council, has done a good job staying on those plans. That's why they're really important to get out there. So that clarity and this validation is greatly appreciated.
Alderman Rozak.
Rachel, I'm going to put you under the gun. Can you answer some questions? This is really good work for what you put together.
Thank you.
But how, is there a way to compare, so we've got this, we got the single family and then the condos and then the true multifamily apartments. Within that structure, though, in the condos and the houses, there are people that rent the houses. Is there any way for us to kind of calculate that in? I mean, technically, it's a house owned by one person, but there's people that rent houses in the city. So technically, that's a renter occupied. There's probably no way for us to really calculate that number unless we happen to know the renters, right?
Right, that's one thing that we talked about in the planning department, and that is true that there are, certain types of housing that it would be very difficult for us to measure. And, maybe somewhere way down the line, there might be an opportunity to, maybe hire somebody to go and do like a very comprehensive, very in-depth study, and we might be able to get those numbers at some point. But yeah, there's no way for us really to know right now whether or not, we've got single-family homes that are being rented. But the percentage of those should be small enough, I would think, that it should not significantly alter the numbers that we have in front
So
of us.
the only reason I asked is because I recently, I've been watching some of the housing reports from different communities. So for instance, Atlanta, 20% of single-family homes are actually renter occupied. So it varies community to community, but it actually can be pretty significant. So when you start talking about how many people are in town renting, it's not just that 50-unit apartment building. It could be houses, in entire areas that are being rented out. But that's tough to figure out unless you know the average ratio for the area. But good job. I thought I'd throw a tough question your way. Good job. Thanks.
Alderman Mulder.
This is a comment maybe followed by a question. So it seems that, in my mind, as I look at this, I really start to think about affordability. And you tend to think renter more affordable than stepping into a mortgage. In Oconomowoc, you're hard pressed to find a house under $300,000 right now that isn't in need of some repair. But even the new apartment stock that's coming on, is $2,000-ish for a 2-bedroom, which is what more than I paid for my first mortgage. So I mean that is a mortgage payment now. Is there should we be considering, in your opinion, should we be considering an affordability study so that we're not just saying, okay, here's a class of, because I think renter does not equal starter. It doesn't equal for a young family or an individual, even with roommates. So should there be an affordability component to this as well?
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, because the plan commissioners brought up the same point, and they said, we just need to make sure we're not looking at this and saying, oh, renter occupied equals affordable. So I know that the planning department does put out an affordability study annually, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Gallo has some more information on that and what exactly that includes, but affordability would definitely be something to look at in the future.
Yeah, Rachel was doing a great job, so I kind of let her field the questions. But she's right, the Plan Commission talked at length about affordability, and how does this, and we stress this is not a affordable study of the housing that we have available in the city. That's something different. The county requires that I do that, as state statute requires that I do that as well. At the end of the year, I put together a housing affordability study. This is just merely a study identifying the number of units that we have in the city. Are they single-family homes, or are we getting more renter-occupied homes, that type of thing? That's all this study is. It's a tool for you guys to use. The affordability is a whole nother discussion that we aren't prepared to talk about.
Yeah, and I know you do that annual thing, and every year I know we come out kind of favorable there, and I'm always like, really? Because they do the high school, the seniors do the affordability where you have to figure out how much money do you make to live, how much you're going to go towards mortgage or rent, and it's like, I don't know, there are many places in Oconomowoc for those recent graduates that can fit a budget so it's good discussion. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Well, Alderman Spiegelberg.
I want to say thank you to Rachel, too. You did an outstanding job, but I also want to say thank you to Jason for being a wonderful mentor to her.
Yeah.
I think only Rachel could possibly know that, though.
Great. Well,
Yes.
thank you very much, Rachel. Good job. Let's move on to new business. Consider act on the preliminary resolution 22-R3056, declaring intent to exercise police power authority for special assessment for Northeast Lift Station improvements. Ms. Sullivan Murray.
Thank you. So this is to get the ball rolling on the special assessments for the contract that we approved at the last council meeting for the lift station in the Northeast region. So the total costs are listed in here. The total cost of that lift station, including the engineering, the cost of the land, all in contingency, $1,594,020. So for the almost $1.6 million, that lift station will support 488 RECs, or residential units, that can connect to it. So with this special assessment that we put out there is based on 488 RECs, and each building permit that comes in will pay their portion as the building permit comes in. So it's set up that way. What'll happen is at the end of construction, we'll get a final engineer's report, and then we will put the exact number in by, the exact costs. But this is the preliminary. Now, we did speak with all of the property owners. There's 4 property owners out there. We had special assessment waivers. They're included in your packet. So they're all signed, which means that the property owners know about the special assessment. They agree that they will pay at time of building permit, and they've seen the estimated dollar amounts. Any questions?
Like Alderman Ellis.
I guess that answers my question, which is who was going to pay for this? I thought it was going to come from the developer, and it was going to come from one other source. I forgot what it was now.
So the contract that
The impact fees.
the impact fees, and that's for the park shelter portion, that's impact fees. For the lift station, the developers or landowners, the land that'll be benefited around in that area that will be building those 488 RECs, they're the ones that are paying for the lift station. So that's what the special assessment is for, is to put in place a mechanism for us to collect that money back from the developers at the time that they come in and apply for a building permit.
And so the developer is going to go for a special assessment and is going to tax the landowners, whatever that may be, and then they're going to pay us through that? Is that what I hear?
What'll happen is, yes, they'll pass those costs on in terms of the lot sales. So the pro rata share for each lot that's created, 460
It's
units.
488 units.
488
Per unit, it's about $3,266.
So it'll all flow through to whoever the end user is, basically.
Have we done that before?
We've done it
Many
for 20
times.
years, 30 years, 50 years.
60 years?
Probably. I wasn't here then.
I'd like to entertain.
But I was born.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
He's graduating from law school.
Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
And to consider act on the final resolution 22-R3055 levying the special assessments for the Northeast Region Infrastructure Project under Section 66.0703 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. So this is the final thing that needs to be done for a special assessment. So this was for the large Northeast infrastructure project that we did with the school district, St. Matthews, and Prairie Creek Ridge in the city, all working together to get that infrastructure out there. So now that it's all in and the final engineer report has come forward, we can finish this and do the final resolution. Now, the school district, Prairie Creek Ridge, and the city all paid their share as the construction invoices came in. We all paid our shares there. St. Matthews has an agreement with the city to pay their share of the costs over 10 years with a special assessment. Bob Miller's property has an agreement with the city and a signed waiver with the city that his property his cost share becomes due on the sale or development of his land. So as they buy pieces of it, as a matter of fact, if you look at the 7 assessments that are out there, the 7 property divisions, the number 7 one has been purchased and paid already. So this is for the a remainder of that, and for us to get that 10-year cycle going with St. Matthews, and to have everything on the books downstairs so that when those sales happen, we can collect the rest of those dollars.
Like to entertain a motion?
Rozak, so moved.
Second, Kavieski.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Altman-Cloth,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis,
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Alderman Mulder,
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper,
Aye.
Alderman Kavieski,
Aye.
Alderman Douglas,
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Oh, aye.
On to consider act on the potential relocation of the public restroom within the Rockwell building. Mr. Fry.
Here, I thought this was going to be the most exciting item on the agenda tonight, but
Still might be. Just kidding.
Feisty.
So, you may have heard about the Rockwell building that Mr. Screema here is looking to construct. Been back and forth on a few things on it, one of them being the public restroom. So recently, Alderman Kowalewski reached out to Jeff, worked with him on adding some additional stalls within the restrooms. There was discussion, kind of, that had started with a potential restaurant user in there, of potentially moving the restrooms from where they were shown on the original drawing over to the other side of the ramp that goes into the underground parking. This would allow for better flow through and management of the restaurant. Jeff Screema is not the one that is pushing or asking for this. It was through his conversations with Alderman Kowalewski, and actually I will let him speak to it, as he was the one that has worked on this, but that's the item that's here tonight.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate working with Mr. Screema in regards to increasing the capacity associated with the bathroom, and that was really the impetus associated with bringing it back, because it is a little bit larger. It does accommodate for a few more users during those events and other activity associated with the green and with the extended boardwalk. The reason that I wanted, just for another conversation and a potential reconsideration, is, again, the flow of people using this area. I think everybody here has done the lake walk, and you go down Main Street. When you do that, you'll have more activity associated with the lake side as well, but visibility of this public space and this building, I think, is something to note. So having some signage that those walking on Main Street can really catch their eye, I think is something of benefit. And because of the visual ability to attract users, not only that would be familiar with the space as residents, but those guests that are coming in from out of town to enjoy our downtown, just to kind of catch their eye. I think the placement to the west of that entry into the underground parking is more appropriate for that, and that's why I asked that to come back. So I appreciate that.
So I'd like to open it up for discussions. If you have any questions for Alderman Kavieski, or for Mr. Screema in the audience to also answer any questions. Alderman Altman-Cloth.
You mentioned that the west side of the parking allows for a bigger bathroom. So how does that change the stall count
The
from
bigger
the two different sides?
the bigger bathroom is going to be accommodated on either side. Is that so? It's either side of that underground parking garage will have the expanded number of stalls and urinals, one on each, bringing a total of 5 stalls in the women's and 3 urinals and 2 stalls on the men's. And
So it's 5 and 5 regardless of what side it's on?
correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood you
Yep.
then.
Alderman are you done?
I think so.
Okay. Alderman Mulder?
I guess I'm not swayed by that. One of the original reasons we wanted it on the right side of the ramp was so we didn't have traffic going across the ramp. The mass of people that will be seeing and using the bathroom are on the lakeside, over on the boardwalk. Yes, they'll complete their walk around the lake, but they'll go by that either way, whether it's on the left or right, and there isn't that much traffic up and down Main Street walking. They come around the lake and we're in front of that building. So I still think there's a safety issue. I think that we've heard loud and clear from Roots and other retailers, and so moving the bathroom, I know it's only 20 feet, but like moving it further away, and we've said, well, this will be nice for the retailer that might move into what's shown as tenant space 3. I think we need to consider the 70 businesses already downtown that are looking for it, rather than trying to move it closer to a potential new. So I'm in favor of keeping them where they are. I think it makes.
Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, I think you well stated, Matt. I think that was the spot they promised it. That's where it should stay. Interesting, I found an old email from September 9th of last year, 2021. It was the Village Green Pavilion Restroom Committee update. Within this email was an update on the meeting, blah, blah, blah. There was a bunch of people there. And this location was part of the areas considered. And what was interesting in the email, which is why I think I'm going to continue voting for this spot and why this is the right spot, was in the email it says the committee did not come to consensus on a favored location for restrooms and recommended waiting for up to 6 months to see if other development options presented themselves. This is the other development option that's presented itself on the boardwalk where everyone's going to walk and fish and use the fishing pier and all that. It's the right spot. It's going to be visible from those businesses like the Roots, like the Mullins, versus I think we move it back across the street. It gets harder, by the ramp and stuff for people to see it and look at it. So I think we'd leave it where it is. I think the size is great. It's going to accommodate a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a heck of a lot nicer. I just heard at the Park and Rec meeting the other night about how badly our public restrooms get vandalized. The restroom over there in Roosevelt was getting vandalized like every day. They'd go and clean it and it'd get vandalized again because it's in a bad location. It's not very visible. There's not a lot of foot traffic. And it gets dark at night, et cetera. So I think this is the better location, so I'm sticking it where it is.
Alderman Kavieski?
So again, I appreciate the conversation and entertaining that, and I hope, if nothing else, that the community understands that the bathroom capacity is being expanded, which is going to be a benefit to the community. So,
Do you want to
Alderman
straw poll on
Spiegelberg?
this or something? Sorry.
no, I don't necessarily think there
I
needs to
agree
be
with,
any. Yeah,
with Mulder and Rozak too.
I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make a motion.
Is one needed? It didn't.
Mm-mm.
We want to move them.
That's why you have the option. With no motion being made, they'll stay where they currently are, and we'll move forward to the next item on the agenda. So as you remember, we moved forward the presentation from Bethany of new business earlier on. So I do have a staff report. Mark, you have some comments? Some nice, very positive information to share with the community and with the council.
So you may recall, it wasn't too long ago when Lori Kobza from the Boardman Law Firm was here, gave us an update on the lawsuit that we were currently in with the sanitary districts around the city. Today we received notice that the judge sided with the city and in his judgment that they felt the charge that we had out there was proper, that it was part of a contract that the districts voluntarily agreed to. So there will be no changes into how we build the sanitary districts.
And a well-written decision by Judge Maxwell, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
It was spot on the law, I think.
Yeah.
So this is a
What we did
circuit
is,
court, or what-
we just
yeah,
found
okay.
it out, and I had Mark share that with the president and the vice president before this meeting.
Appeal going to happen, or no?
Yes.
It is, okay. But we feel good where this is going, Stan, and now that it's been found at the circuit level, that kind of helps us.
Like an appeal.
They can appeal.
Of course, they can appeal. I'm gonna stay out of this.
Yeah.
He has to?
Yeah, he has to stay out of it, but it was a,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's right, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
They could appeal if they want to. They have to do that typically, I think it's within 45 days of the decision. If the judgment's entered, they get a little less time. There's confusing, I never actually
It's
figured
90
that out.
days unless they do
we do a notice.
of entry of
Notice, so they get
judgment, then it's
45, yeah. So typically 45 days, because they'll do the notice. but-
Any other staff reports, Mark?
No.
Nice to have closure on that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Any other reports or comments from Alderman? Alderman Mulder?
While I'm disappointed we're not moving forward with bidding or taking a look at Phase 2, I was happy to hear that I heard mostly universal support for moving forward with that once we have the funding. So let's keep a regular cadence of feedback on where that funding is. And when we get that bid and we hit that magic number, let's get it back on the agenda as soon as possible to take that vote and move it forward.
Sounds good. Any other comments from Alderman? I do have one comment from the mayor. If any of the council members have anything they would like me to ask or investigate, Thursday and Friday I'll be at the League of Municipalities Leadership Conference. I went to it last year in Fond du Lac. I'm going to it again this year. This year it's in Brookfield. And if you have any questions or things that you're struggling with or want me to investigate, please send me a direct email, and I'll do my best to try to find those answers. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?